version. Just think about that. JR rated. JR rated. Sounds like a good show name, doesn't it? It just might take over. Anyways, I'm here this one with you guys. Welcome, Dragon Squad. I think you guys know and remember me. Yes, it's only a Tuesday. It is not Big News Wednesday. It is just JR Takeover Tuesday. Oh, that's even better. You listen, I got so many of these. I can go all morning, but instead of me going all morning, I will first off invite the guest in. Good friend of ours, good friend of the show, also has a show on the network, Wosnia. We got Wosny Lambre here with us today to join me to discuss some of today's events. How you feeling, man?
I'm good. Very happy to be here. As always, shouts to the entire Dragon Squad. Slam Dunk Dragon here checking in.
That's what I was gonna ask you. I have not had a chance to find out what's been designated as your name, or if you chose it yourself, because it kind of goes back and forth here.
Nah, I'm a man of the people. The people designated me to be Slam Dunk Dragon because I cover the NBA in my day job.
Oh, I thought it had something to do with you like playing ball and you got hops or something.
Nah, no. It's literally just my job.
As I was gonna say, eventually we got to get on the court because I did play before my knees got old, and we'll see if they still hold up. I'm always down for a challenge. But no, good to have you. Thank you for joining me. This should be an insightful discussion today. But first, before we even get started though, I did want to have one programming note. As usually you guys know, we have Indisputable up next after the Damage Report on the network. He's on Twitch. That's also with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, in case you guys do not know. You can also watch it on YouTube. It's right after the Damage Report. It is at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 Pacific here, youtube.com/indisputable TYT. To watch my man, Dr. Rashad Ritchie. I was on that show a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago, one Monday. The days all blend together. Amazing show. I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna try and make a somewhat regular appearances. Today he's got Adrienne Lawrence. I mean, you love the great legal mind, Adrienne Lawrence. She's always there to let us know what we've got wrong and what we've got right. So she's gonna be on with Dr. Rashad Ritchie this morning. It should be great. But if you're ready, Woz, let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. As the Delta variant is spreading across the country and the world, the COVID cases are shooting up. And so it's leaving many governors, many mayors in this case, to determine what exactly to do as far as vaccinations and the lack thereof and the spread that is happening. So New York City will be the first city that will require proof of vaccination for workers and customers who want to participate indoor activities like going to restaurants, theaters, gyms, things like that. So you'll have to actually provide a proof of your vaccination records in order to enter these places and have a good time and be a regular person, I guess, to the point that we can figure that out. And it will be called the Key to NYC Pass. It will begin on August 16th. And it'll start enforcement will begin on September 13th. So let's get into some of these details that Mayor de Blasio was talking about. Let's listen here.
Unvaccinated, unfortunately, you will not be able to participate in many things. That's the point we're trying to get across. It's time for people to see vaccination as literally necessary to living a good and full and healthy life. The Key to NYC Pass will be a first in the nation approach. It will require vaccination for workers and customers in indoor dining, in indoor fitness facilities, indoor entertainment facilities. This is going to be a requirement. The only way to patronize these establishments indoors will be if you're vaccinated, at least one dose. The same for folks in terms of work. They'll need at least one dose. This is crucial because we know that this will encourage a lot more vaccination. We've seen it already.
We've seen it already. So obviously, before I think I saw this a week or two ago, de Blasio was also pushing you have to have vaccinations in order to enter this big comeback party that they were going to have with all of these celebrities and big name artists to frontline and headline, basically a big festival concert for the summer, but you need vaccination. So he's looking for different kinds of incentives, and now it appears to be a little bit more of a direct, not necessarily incentive, but a direct mandate specifically on your COVID vaccines records. So let me before we bring in Woz, I want you to talk about this because I think you're out that way. So the policy, it appears to be the first of its kind in the US, as I mentioned. This is from The Hill, comes amid a nationwide spike in COVID-19 and infections driven largely by the spread of the Delta variant in people who are unvaccinated. So while New York City appears to be the first city instituting a municipal vaccine passport, the state developed its own mobile app which debuted in March. Private businesses, including sports arenas and concert halls, that wanted to require proof of vaccination could use the app, and it's called the Excelsior Pass. So is this gonna work out? I mean, there's a thing, we already got the pushback that's happening just from vaccinations itself, from a certain percentage of the public. But this is in New York. We saw how things are happening in Florida and Louisiana and Texas in some cases, a lot of times that in Missouri as well. Is this something that's gonna spread, and will it work?
I think New York City is a very particular case. Me being a native New Yorker, grew up there, understanding and knowing a lot of people who were transplanted. And part of the reason why you put up with rat-infested subways and 75-foot square apartments and ridiculous rent and inclement weather and you name it, is that you're able to be in one of the most social cities in the world, if not the most social city. This is part of the payoff, is going out to restaurants, museums, bars, etc., right? So in New York City specifically, yeah, of course I can see this being, this incentive driving up vaccinations, of course. I don't know that that's gonna be the case in Biloxi, Mississippi, right? I don't know that this approach will work over there, but in New York, yeah, it makes sense to do this because this is the payoff, right? Like enjoying these outdoor social activities, leaving your house is the payoff in New York. So I do think this will work.
Well, I also wonder what the numbers are. Maybe I should have found out the numbers specifically in New York City, because I keep thinking it's on a range of like the state, and that's when we could run into some problems. You go upstate, you maybe go to certain boroughs, you go out to Long Island, maybe. I'm not sure the areas in where people may have more pushback, because there was those protests in New York about Cuomo and de Blasio and the things that they were doing as far as COVID response. And it was obviously based along party lines, because people were protesting it with Trump flags. It was more of the, you're pushing back against my president. Of course, this is before he was voted out. You're pushing back against my president, because there was those epic fights between Trump and Cuomo, and then Trump and de Blasio, and honestly between de Blasio and Cuomo. So that kept going back and forth within their battles. And it turned to more of a personal thing rather than what they're trying to do for the state and the city. So I mean, even from this aspect, I wonder if other areas, other cities may try this, specifically consider if this works for the biggest city in the state.
Yeah, and then I think, incentivizing the vaccine by making it a requirement for fun is one thing. I think destigmatizing the vaccine is a whole other, right? Because, I've spoken to people anecdotally in my own personal life who are on several sides of this argument, right? Like some people are just staunchly like, I'm not putting that in my body. Other people is like, well, if I don't have to, I'm not going to. And then there's other people who just see it as, a sort of imperative for great health. I'm wondering what they can do to get people to understand that being vaccinated won't grow them a second nose or implant them with a microchip or some of the other stuff that is out there. And the irony of all of this, Jayar, is that like, I think the main culprit for this misinformation is YouTube, while you and I are right now broadcasting live on YouTube. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and there's the thing, I've got friends and family members that have discussed these types of topics via Facebook posts or via this doctor on YouTube that just said random things. And I was like, so where did you find this doctor? And that's the thing, as you mentioned, there's a flood of that kind of information. And then if you, in the middle of your flood of information, then you see Mayor de Blasio sitting in front of the camera at a desk telling you how he's gonna make sure that you can't go to the gym and you can't go to the movie theater, you can't go here without your vaccine cards. That's what they knew was coming. Many of these folks that were trying to debunk this as an issue. I mean, as a vaccine is something that's not effective or useful. I mean, that spreads even to masks. So it was kind of set up for this to eventually come, because as the spread keeps happening, this is one of those things that you could easily pick. So what's happened in this situation? Now they've got a little bit more fodder, and that's the thing that I worry about. It's anything that feeds into these false narratives. Just because it feeds into a false narrative doesn't mean that it's true. it just goes into the false narrative. But if people are believing it, that's the nature of the game. I don't know how to flip that scenario, and that's the hard part, really. And I mean, you mentioned Biloxi, Mississippi. I'm not even trying there. This is not gonna be a situation.
Well, you gotta mention these places because that's part of it. We don't live in some siloed society, right? Like this is a transient society. People are constantly moving from place to place. So it's not hard for something to spread from New York to Biloxi or vice versa, right? And so we do have to think about those other people. I just wonder what it's gonna take for people to sort of get over the apprehension of taking it in the first place. Because to me, it just, I throw my hands up in the sense that the people who refuse to be vaccinated have decided at a certain point that they are more afraid of the vaccine than they are of COVID-19 or the new Delta variant of COVID-19, which is like, it's hard to square like that people have decided that, and I'm somebody who took Johnson & Johnson, so I'm living on the edges of this vaccine thing. That people have decided that they are less afraid of COVID than they are of vaccines, which is just, it's just something that's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, I guess I'm on the negative side. I don't think it's gonna. I think it'll help. I think this whole thing with de Blasio, it's gonna help to a degree, but I don't know how many people that haven't gotten the vaccine yet haven't gotten it because they're like, I'm waiting for some fun things that I'm gonna miss out on. Whatever is ingrained in their thought process for what they think is happening, I don't think it's gonna be shaken by the threat of not being able to go to a concert or a theater. In fact, it may galvanize their thoughts further to think, let me push for harder because look, now they're really coming for me now. So anyway, so mark me as the Debbie Downer, or mark me as pessimistic on people's response to it. If you've gotten it already, the vaccine's already cool, they're gonna be open and fine with this. What I'm talking specifically to people who have it, and specifically in New York. We'll see if this stretches over to LA, because it's also mentioned in this article that de Blasio is one mayor that is requiring this, but he's not going hardcore on mask mandates. And that's more of what's happening in states like California to try and mitigate this risk. And again, if
mask mandate is a joke, by the way. It's a joke. It's silly that we're doing that. In the sense that if everything is open and in the same exact way that it was, and I'm not saying that we should close down. I'm actually the opposite of that. I just think in California specifically, there's been a lot of posturing of doing stuff just to be seen to doing something. And I think that's all the mask
like what
is.
Like you talking about personally people, or it's like policy?
No, I'm talking about the powers that be. Gavin Newsom, Garcetti. I can never say that guy's name right because of the wire.
Garcetti.
Yeah, Garcetti.
It's a good strong name.
And because so like, for instance, last year, I remember I went to Napa Valley, and Napa Valley at the time was just completely open, right? Like it was kind of like you have to wear a mask when you leave your seat or something, but everything was basically open in Napa. And in LA, everything was basically shut down, right? This was like, I wanna say like July or June or something like that. And everybody was up in arms because they're just like, yo, Gavin Newsom has business interests in Napa. These people are doing fundraisers at French Laundry at places like 2,000 a plate or something ridiculous like that. And so that's what's been happening over here. Like there's no rhyme or reason as to why Napa was a place that was completely open and Los Angeles wasn't. And it's just been people throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks. Enforcing a vaccine mandate for public places, that's hard policy right there.
And also I've just noticed a lot of people don't really follow it. It's since this is the thing in LA specifically, it's all I can vouch for is people are following mask mandates everywhere. I mean, everyone's masking up inside and half the time outside. Even when there was more evidence that it's less transmissible outside in the heat, all that stuff. But once, I think it was June 15th, 16th, whatever day it was in California when they lifted the mask mandates because numbers were so much better. Then people were like, whoa, like they're stripping off the mask, tossing to the side. So the thought now of, oh man, we got to go back to doing it at least inside. the feeling has been generating already from people here. They're like, but I got vaccinated. I took off my mask. I tossed it out. I don't need it anymore. So it's a little harder to reinstitute the mandate is the hard part. And that's the way it's gonna, I think that's where the struggle is gonna be. And we know how science and information works. It's going to keep flowing. And as we learn new things, you may have to respond differently, but it's hard to convince people of that. That's the hard part. So anyway, I think we've gotten through all that, enough of that. So we're gonna take a quick break, you guys. I wanna see what you guys have to say about this. This is my first time gonna run through some of the comments. When I did this on the main show, it wasn't as clear and cut. I think I'm gonna get to you guys correctly and awesomely. We'll be right back. I'm sorry, we have to fix that graphic, everyone. That says John responds to the Dragon Squad. Not the case on Takeover Tuesday with Jayar and Woz. Anyways, the takeover continues. Let's shout out a couple of new members. Ricky, the Gardening Dragon. Oh, I like these names. Welcome to tier 2, Ricky. Also, welcome to tier 1, Walking on My Grave. Jeez. That's cool. I actually kind of like it. It's pretty poetic. Some of the, let's see, I want to go through some of the subjects that we're talking about already in that first one. First of all, also in the super chats. First of all, thank you, Forbesilla. All the fine dragons are hosting today. Heart faces, much love. See, they wanted to make sure that at least this particular Forbesilla didn't want to put me or you on blast by saying one in particular. So
respect. We appreciate all the comments. Yes, if my head expands in size on my screen, you guys absolutely understand why. I'm very flattered by the compliments.
I've already admitted before, if you say my name nicely in a tweet or something on these comments, you're gonna get read on air. Anyways, I mean, I'm easy. We're gonna go to Manchin later. Someone's asking about the XFL. We'll ask you about that later, Woz. Oh, here we go. See, look at this. Franklin Splicer, excuse me, Franklin Sharp Splicer on the super chat said, Jayar, you rock. There, the seat's already there. By far is number one of my favorite TV stars. Geez, been with us through thick and thin. Without you, it would be a sin. Was for the cause, point out the silly laws. I didn't realize it was a poem. I'm sorry, Franklin. I messed up the flow at the beginning. Once I saw the flow, I picked it up. But thank you for the super chat. That was awesome. The one time that your poems get jacked up. Also on Twitch, Dragon 007. What's up, TYT fam? It's gonna be a big news Tuesday. We'll shift it over today. I like the big news label we get here. Also, Jayar with the Eagles hat, rocking it. Where are you at now, actually, Woz? You said you're native of New York. Where do you reside?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm up
You're
here. Yeah, I'm up in the valley, sweating my tits off. So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm here.
You got to get out of the basin.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been over here since 2019, basically February 2019, and I like it up here. It's just in July and August it becomes like, wow, maybe this wasn't the smartest thing I ever did.
Well, you kind of have to. LA, then it's not like, no, it's relative. It is not cheaper out there. I mean, it's not cheap out there. It's cheaper out there. That's by like $100 or $100 or $200. Got to be honest.
Yeah, and I'll say honestly, where I'm at in Encino, it's actually not very cheap either.
Yeah, you're in Encino. I thought you're gonna go to the valley and not go to the cheap part.
Nah. I'm not up north in Chatsworth or something like that. So no, I'm not getting the bang for the buck that you get in different places over here.
Sorry, I used this. I used some of our comments time because I had to find out. But it's very interesting. So RT for RT Dragons is gifting 5. Sorry, just jumped. Is gifting 5 tier 1 subs to TYT's community. They've gifted a total of 35 in the channel. That is awesome. Thank you, RT for RT Dragon. Also, anti-phenomenophobic. Sorry. Subscribe with Prime. They subscribed for 2 months. Thank you. Again, these are all Twitch folks. And Twitter, I love Twitter. Let's go. We got a few seconds. We're gonna come back in a second to talk more because Dragon Squad speaks. I listen. But listen to me after a couple more of these seconds. Where are we going now? Welcome back to Take Over Tuesday on the Damage Report, JR Rated Edition. Joined by Wosny Lambre, of course, to discuss more things. Let's jump right back into it. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. Your favorite senator, Lindsey Graham, has announced he's tested positive for COVID. Now, you can probably imagine the things that were probably gonna be said to him and at him on Twitter, of course. But it is one of the breakthrough cases. He did point out that he has been vaccinated. So it's a breakthrough case and his symptoms are mild. Let's go straight to his tweets to see exactly the way he put this. So he said, I was just informed by the House physician. This is just as of yesterday on Monday. I was just informed by the House physician I have tested positive for COVID-19 even after being vaccinated. I started having flu-like symptoms Saturday night and went to the doctor this morning. Now there's more layers to this about who he's been around and how he's been around them and those other folks and the potential freak out that's going on. But he continued on this announcement on Twitter. I feel like I have a sinus infection and at present time I have mild symptoms. I'll be quarantining for 10 days. I'm very glad I was vaccinated because without vaccination, I'm certain I would not feel as well as I do now. My symptoms would be far worse. So those are some of the tweets he had, and we're gonna get to some of the contacts and stuff, but that's the juicier part about this. But the way he was talking about how he's been vaccinated and his symptoms would be worse and all that. First of all, what's your first thought on this? Was he one of the ones you figured would be these senators that's pointing out that they've been that they've contracted COVID?
I think it's kind of simple whenever you're trying to read between the lines of rhetoric coming from the GOP and the Democrats too, by the way. I'm sure we'll get to them later. But to me, this just means that the money has gotten the message through to the GOP, like stop screwing around with your vaccine talk. We want to get people vaccinated. That's how we're gonna get back to business as usual, i.e. our profits getting back to where they need to be. People not being vaccinating is a destabilizing force when it comes to the economy of this country. And so the money class has gotten the message through to McConnell, to the rest of the GOP establishment. Stop it. Encourage these people to get vaccinated. We don't need this tomfoolery anymore. And that's all you're seeing here. Obviously they were playing footsie with the whole vaccine conspiracy or vaccine skepticism earlier, right? Whether it be Fox News or other prominent people within the GOP. But again, the message has gotten through from the top because we know where these dudes take their marching orders from. It's not from their constituents, it's from the big donors, it's from the corporate class. And that's all that means to me when I see a weasel like Lindsey freaking Graham now, sort of singing the praises of the vaccine.
Honestly, I felt he could have sung a little bit louder because I feel like there's one more aspect of that tweet thread he could have gone through. I've got COVID, I've been vaccinated, thankfully. I still got it, but I've got mild symptoms. These things could have been far worse. All those are perfectly acceptable, in my opinion, things to say. The only thing left is so therefore, please go out and get vaccinated because if you don't, you may end up in a worse situation than I was in. Very thankful. Like that's be one more layer because they don't have a lack of declaration when it comes to telling constituents or when they're on Fox News to tell the audience, hey, you might want to question that vaccine. I have questions about the vaccine. Are you sure? I'm not sure. Yeah, I've gotten it. Now, at least they're admitting that's the one layer. They're admitting that they've gotten it because there's many pundits and there's many politicians who say a lot about how you shouldn't get vaccinated. And of course they've been vaccinated because they have the information right in front of them and they don't want to die because a lot of them are old guys and they don't want to have to deal with all this. They've seen it. You think they don't have information on how this stuff really works and information about what is it that could happen to them if they don't take these kinds of precautions? It's just a matter of now letting that, or at least giving that perspective to your constituents and the people that for some reason follow every word that you say. Anyway, it goes, the juicy part that I promised, let's get straight to that now next. Now, as he mentioned, he was getting flu-like symptoms on Saturday night, according to his tweets. What was he doing on Saturday night? Let's go to that from CNBC. So Lindsey Graham attended a Saturday night party, on fellow Senator Joe Manchin's DC-based, quote, almost heaven is the name of this houseboat he's got. And that's according to Graham's office. So Graham's office put Joe Manchin in his almost heaven boat. on blast. Continuing on, other senators, there was a bunch of people there. Obviously, it was a party. Other senators present at the party included Mark Kelly, of Democrat of Arizona, Chris Coons, another Democrat of Delaware, John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, and Jackie Rosen, Democrat of Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, and Maria Cantwell, also another Democrat of Washington. So that's just some of the names that popped up at this House party. So I'm sure all these senators that were there, I mean, again, more assumptions about vaccine standards and vaccine past that they've had, histories that they've had with the vaccine. If they've all been vaccinated, we'll see. But they're probably wondering exactly where this could land on them, and maybe we'll see a couple more cases pop up. You never know. So also speaking to reporters on his way out of the Capitol Monday, Manchin said that he did not have a party. Instead, he said, when you say party, there's no parties. Basically, there's gatherings we have on almost heaven. So we know each other and we talk to each other. Not a party. We know listen, Woz, it's not a party. It's just we got on this houseboat, a bunch of people got on one particular location, collected together. There was a couple of alcoholic drinks poured, conversations were had. We had some food, a couple people hooked up. It wasn't a party.
This honestly makes me wonder what Joe Manchin considers to be a party. Is it an 8-ball of coke and some prostitutes? Like what type of parties is this guy having? Like if people gather in a designated location, libations are had, laughs and jokes and stories are told, that's a party. I don't understand how this guy is saying that it isn't, unless of course he's used to more hardcore partying, Jayar. That's the only conclusion, the only one that I could take.
It's the only one you can take because he's not being honest. Now you have to extrapolate from that and try and figure out, so what's a party?
What's a party, bro?
Because the other part is, I'm sure he's worried about these. Sorry, one last quote because of some about what he's worried about. So when he was asked about the party that went on, Manchin said, so they asked how long this party went on. Manchin said, I don't know, whatever it takes to eat a hamburger or two, all outdoors. All outdoors. Okay. I'm not sure if the kids, maybe Joe Manchin's up on what the kids are saying for parties and what they're doing at them. Maybe eating a hamburger too means something different than what I consider it to mean, because I'm old. Joe Manchin's hip. He's down with the peoples. He's on TikTok or something. Either way it goes. So I think part of the worry that Joe Manchin had here is, if you look at that list again, first of all, the large level of these are Democrats, but you have a couple of Republicans that were on the boat. Obviously, Lindsey Graham was part of that. But you have a couple of Democrats, and he's towing this line of this bipartisan nature because we all want to work together, but I'm still this Democrat that's working for Democratic goals. I just want to do it with the convincing of other Republicans because they need to work with the system too. We all know what he's been saying. But there could be some assumptions about what are they talking about? What are they partying about on this boat? They're a little too buddy with these folks that they're trying to get something done with. Or actually, maybe he takes it as a feather in his cap. It's like, I'm working with people that I disagree with along political, lines.
Yeah, what people got to understand about the Senate specifically, way more so than the House, is that everybody who's in the Senate sort of views it as this great club. They're all buddy. It's like a fraternity or sorority or whatever. It's literally a club and it's very collegial, which is why, if you guys will remember during the Democratic primary of 2020, Bernie would just refuse to hammer Joe Biden. He just refused to. Why? Because they've been buddies for decades now. They're friends. Like, that's the nature of this club. So Joe Manchin getting on a boat with a bunch of his fellow colleagues in the Senate should surprise nobody. This is how the culture of that, governing body works. These guys and gals are just super chummy, no matter the party affiliation. That's just how the Senate is and kind of has always been. That's why you see these guys talk with reverence about these stupid, just bureaucratic rules that have existed for hundreds of years. They have a lot of reverence for the institution, for the club. And so again, you shouldn't be surprised when you see Joe Manchin throw a boat party with a couple of his pals from his club.
Actually, yeah. So specifically, like, do you fault him for that? Because this is the thing. Barack Obama's about to have his 60th birthday party at Martha's Vineyard, and it's like a who's who list.
Go crazy.
It's gonna go crazy, right? And so, of course, the first question comes up is, look, we're dealing with this Delta variant. We got these influx of cases. Florida's blowing up. So, is this a responsible thing to do? Again, also with the fact that I'm assuming you're not gonna have a bunch of people at your 60th birthday party without making sure they're vaccinated. If you're an ex-president, then I would think they're trying to take these precautions. But as you can see, Lindsey Graham went to this non-party on Joe Manchin's boat and still caught it, although vaccinated. Is this gonna cause another problem also for Obama too,
I don't know. It seems like if you're vaccinated and you're not getting really sick, and it seems like everybody else who's vaccinated is not getting really sick, I don't see what the problem would actually be that isn't just optics based, right? Like if we're gonna talk about, because this is the thing, we gotta deal with reality now. If we're gonna talk about what the science and the data is showing, meaning the last stat that I saw of hospitalizations, it's 0.001 of people who are vaccinated. Right. Meaning if you get vaccinated, this is something you can deal with at your crib, on your own with no severe symptoms. What's the big deal here? People are gonna see it like, I did my part. I went and got the jab or two, for those of you who didn't take the venerable Johnson & Johnson like me. And I'm gonna live my life, and I don't really see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, because that's the thing. And you mentioned, I think earlier, some of the I'm not sure if it's the right term, but the virtue signaling that may come sometimes.
Yep.
But the thing is, again, if we are looking at the science, and then they've discovered, and we point out the whole thing about the leaked reports from the CDC and stuff that happened about even the vaccinated, how they can now spread it, even if they don't have the same kind of big symptoms. That is the only question, because I'm on this similar boat as far as fine, have your parties, because I had my cousin, and I had and my wife's brother came over the weekend. There was 4 extra people in the house, right? So I don't know if I could pull a Joe Manchin. I can't say it was a party, but it was like 4 new people in the house, but we'd already known their vaccination status. We know what they've been up to, but you always know that there's a potential, So for the people that are unvaccinated, or for the people that are too young to be vaccinated, then that's the next question: is if the vaccinated have this chance to then spread it to those who are unvaccinated or not available for vaccination, becomes the problem. And then do you really get worried about it? I don't know, and that's the line we have to now dance and go on and see if you're really the same person. So we'll see. I don't know. I guess I don't fault anyone, honestly. But again, it's the optics. These are politicians.
Yep.
All they care about is optics, not about the party. The party itself, they're gonna have more of. They're definitely not gonna stop those. What they may stop is making sure people know about it. So let's take one more break, you guys. We're gonna read through a few more of your comments about this stuff, and we'll be right back. I'll be back in 2 seconds. That graphic still hasn't been fixed yet. I don't know how much longer I'm gonna put up with this. But John reads through the Dragon Squad stuff. Let's see what the Dragon Squad has to say. I wanna specifically this, okay, so from Franklin Sharp Fly said, maybe I can actually get it right this time. I'm sorry, you're gonna get 2 because I screwed up the first one. Beware the invite to a BBQ. You ought to think again. Maybe the one who invited you isn't a real friend. A good dish of barbecued karma is what's being served. Just might be fitting for those who deserve it. Lovely, thank you. Let's see, from Tony D. Jayar, will you and Woz go purple with Dragon Daddy if challenged? Do you know about the purple hair thing, Woz? Because I'm
not familiar with the purple hair thing. Please bring me up to speed.
John said they had a bet or something with the audience as he was hosting, and he said, if I get to this amount, trust, I just found out about this yesterday, and then I stopped listening. But he had a bet that he'll dye his hair purple if they get to this milestone. They got to the milestone like nearly immediately. Wow. And then got to dye his hair purple. So now this is stretched now to saying, is JR gonna purple to dread his hair? No, No, I had nothing to do with. I had nothing to do with that. I just want to clear that up and answer that question in case people are wondering. And Lauren McRae super chat as well. Jayar and Woz, be still my heart. Two big red pumping hearts. Oh, and fly Eagles fly. Let's check it. You get more love when you wear certain hats. I'm just letting you guys know that. For future reference for your livelihoods. Go to a job interview, wear a hat that the guy likes, and you will get the job. Let's see. Okay, Christopher Moore also on Super Chats. Takeover Tuesday. Great work, gents. Let's pressure folks to stop being babies and do what's necessary. Wear a damn mask and do what you'd expect from any decent human being. This ain't rocket science. I agree, Christopher. Now, the masks, I'm, as I was mentioning California, I'm back and forth. When I'm outside, it's just not happening. When I'm indoors, it's on. It's just the way it is. If nothing else, I want other folks to feel comfortable around me. Let's see. Okay, if you want to make vaccination, this is from Beta Ray Bob. If you want to make vaccination requirements work in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Florida, then make vaccinations required to get into college football stadiums for games. Well, that's one of the fun aspects that Woz was talking about. That in New York City, when people want to have fun, these will be some things. But definitely, if that's the main vein, football season is upcoming. It's already August. And they're gonna want to see Roll Tide, and they're going to see Auburn roll, all that stuff. So it'll be. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. It's a packed stadium. It kind of makes sense. It's kind of the way it should be. Lynn Bloom says, "Hello. If this party is a quote business get together, we the taxpayers will be paying for it via his expense reports." I don't think it is. I mean, he's just saying that it's not a party, but he probably paid for it. It's his boat that, of course, whatever ways that he gained his wealth, he buys boats. So Twitch really fast. We have a few seconds. Oh, I bet Joey Manchin knows how to get down. He reportedly met his wife at a frat party at West Virginia University. I don't know. I can't confirm or deny it. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, many people met their parties, but their partners at parties in college, in a frat party specifically. So we know he's got some background to it. So it's fine. It's cool. Teddy Bear Dragon, the vaccine was never going to completely stop transmission. Agreed, and it should always be pointed out. This has always been the plan, but the media sensationalizes cases. Thank you very much. We'll be back in a couple seconds for depressing stories. Hey, you guys, we are back on TDR Takeover Tuesday, JR Rated edition with Big Woz. Let's do this some more. You ready for some depressing news, Woz? Let's do it. Okay. A couple of more Washington, DC police officers have committed suicide. Capitol Police, DC police officers committed suicide after, in the wake of the January 6th insurrection in the Capitol. I am muted, huh? Okay. In the Capitol. So as this has happened, we're not really sure the connections based off whether or not it was based off the committee hearings that have been happening, but there's been two more as we saw it there was before. So straight from the Guardian reported about this. Washington DC's Metropolitan Police Department confirmed late Monday that another of its officers, Kyle DeFreytag, died by suicide earlier in July. That was just hours after declaring that the DC Metropolitan Police Department officer Gunther Hashida killed himself on July 29th. So on July 29th is the one that they've been talking about, but then just previous to that, earlier in July, which I don't think that story really got any legs about this other officer that also committed suicide, Kyle DeFreytag. But this second one, the latest one, just on July 29th, came apparently after the committee hearing on accountability for January 6th occurred. So continuing on, DeFreytag, who was only 26, was deployed to protect the Capitol after police cleared the building of rioters and was involved in enforcing a curfew, is what the department said. Also, Officer Gunther Hashida, who was assigned to the emergency response team within the Special Operations Department, was found dead at home on July 29th. It's also what the department said. So in January, another police officer, Jeffrey Smith, these are the ones that previously had happened before, 12-year veteran of the force, and the Capitol Police officer, Howard Liebengood, the 16-year veteran, both also responded to the January 6th attack. They both died by suicide. So from the count, it's up to like 4. The latest being July 29th. And that was in the wake of, as we saw, some very powerful testimony from 4 officers from the Metropolitan Police Department and Capitol Police officers that were threatened, nearly killed, and attacked by this insurrection mob on the 6th. It's hard for me to come up with and I'm sure, maybe not, but this is what my assumption would have been. A lot of the thoughts and feelings behind this were based off of the negativity that many of these cops received. The pushback, calling them traitors, saying they deserve to die, and then hearing some of this testimony could have potentially triggered more cops that were dealing with the events of the day and maybe were within themselves, or maybe it's completely unrelated. That's the hard part. There's many people who maybe deal with these types of situations, mental health, depression, and everything, and they end up going this route, and it's always something that you wish you could have avoided. So I wonder to which case they're gonna look into this, or at least provide some kind of help for any other cops that had to deal with anything on that day, or are catching some of the post trauma that comes with dealing with the way people are treating and calling them names now. We saw it from the Laura Ingrams and the Tucker Carlsons of the world. So even without trying to connect it to these 4, or at least the latest 2 that have died, in what ways can we help the folks that are still with us? That's what I wonder is the next case we can do. Because I mean, if we point fingers, it's easy to do, but I wonder how much that will stick.
I'm not gonna lie. From the beginning, I thought the framing of this incident on January 6th was a little bit off, right? I don't know. I'm somebody who felt like they kind of sensationalized it, the politicians who were at the Capitol that day, as some sort of military, it's not military, excuse me, some type of coup, some type of insurrection, et cetera, et cetera. The fact of the matter is, there was no threat that the United States government would be overturned that day. In order to have an effective coup, you have to have the military on board. And we all know the military was not on board with this clown show, this freak show that happened on January 6th. And so instead of censoring the people who were actually at the front lines, meaning the police officers and the security, i.e. the everyday normal people who actually bore the brunt of this awful happening on January 6th. I thought it was a misstep to sort of be all very pie in the sky about the sanctity of democracy was disgraced, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, actually, man, the jobs of these everyday working people were made to be miserable and hellish. People are dying. There were people who died doing their jobs that day. People who got hit with spiked baseball bats. People who were basically terrorized at their jobs, man. And the effects of this, like this was a traumatic event for those people who were charged with defending that damn building, and these politicians, mind you, again, politicians who are of means, of privilege, who have access to power. Those people are straight. They're fine. Like, worst come to worst, these people can get private security. They can do all kinds of stuff for themselves. But the people who are on the front lines, the people like these officers who have died tragically from suicide, God only knows the amount of therapy that's gonna go into healing from this thing. Like, there were mobs of people with weapons storming their place of work, and it was their job to put their lives and bodies on the line. That is traumatic. What happened to these people, and I'm sorry they haven't been centered in the way that I think they should have been, because a lot of times it's a bunch of politicians getting on TV, going on the Sunday show and being like, oh, I was scared, I had to flee for my life. Well, guess what? These people were actually fighting them on the freaking streets, right? And I think that we should have been centering the experiences of those people from this very start, specifically when you consider the folks who fan these flames on the GOP have historically claimed to be the most pro-cop people in the world. Damn near. And so, we should have been centering these police officers and the horrible things that happened to them that day from the beginning. And I think we're gonna see the pivot to centering them rather than the politicians who had to, pick up their laptops and run.
Well, I would just hope that maybe at least as these types of things happen, again, I don't, it's a little tough to directly take the pundits and the hate that comes from talkers on the air towards these guys killing themselves. And you could make that connection, but it's hard to definitively make that connection. But I would hope that at least it gives them some kind of a pause to at least go, well, maybe I had this to do with it. And centering these folks, as you're saying, I would hope wouldn't bring more of the disdain, because we know the names of the 4 officers that put their face and names out there. And yeah, they get a lot of positive response and support, and they get a lot of negative response and a lot of hate. And it's just those people that they don't have to put their names and faces to it. They can have a Twitter avy and then tweet out of their house, and it's just whatever it is, And so that's the hard part. This is what we're pushing back against. And it's one of those things that I would hope that more of them can come out and have their names and stories be told without hatred being the response, and then hopefully without more violence or more depression and more suicides to follow. So before we get to this next story, let me do one more programming note, you guys. So we got the Nina Turner primary tonight. I'm very excited about this because we want to make sure that we have some more progressives actually elected. So this is the primary. So tune in today. It's today, August 3rd. Enjoying Cenk Uygur, Anna Casper, and Dr. Rashad Ritchie, who of course is coming up next on his own show for our live coverage for the primary edition for Ohio's 11th congressional district. Senator Nina Turner is running now, of course. And if she can get into Congress, that'll be an absolute game changer. So that's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, tyt.com/live. You can catch on all of these. It'll be a beautiful event. Before we get out from this hour, let's get through one more. This story was I figured I would enjoy this one. I just figured I would. Let's jump right in. Fox News Media said that it's parted ways with Judge Andrew Napolitano, longtime legal analyst on the network, following an associate producer's claims of sexual harassment. Now, that sounds like a normal story that you may hear from Fox News and maybe an associate producer in previous years, because of the nature that we've seen that has been uncovered at Fox News. But there's a couple of different levels here, because this doesn't just encompass Napolitano, but also Larry Kudlow. Let's get into some of those details from Deadline. The employee's name was John Fawcett. He worked on Fox Business Network's Kudlow, the Kudlow Show. As we know, Larry Kudlow was one of the financial advisors for Donald Trump. So he's pretty much new to the network. Anyway, he works on that show and on filed a lawsuit just Monday in the New York Supreme Court against the network, outlining his claims against Napolitano specifically. So he alleged that Larry Kudlow, who's a host of another show, used ethnic slurs and made sexually inappropriate comments about women, quote, in front of multiple staffers, including himself and his senior vice president. He also claimed that Kudlow nixed the appearance of Representative Byron Donalds on the show because of his race. Representative Byron Donalds is a Republican from Florida, and he's been appearing on conservative network television promoting his brand of politics. And he's a black representative, a black Republican, which of course you can see some of the ways that he's getting I guess pushback from general constituency there. So you can see where he may go. Now keep that in mind with Donalds, but we want to get to more details of what Fawcett had to say against Napolitano. This is the first big part. Upon first learning of John Fawcett's allegations against Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News Media immediately investigated the claims and addressed the matter with both parties. The network and Napolitano have since parted ways. So we don't know the details of how that all broke down, but we take all allegations of misconduct seriously. We're committed to providing a safe, transparent, and collaborative workplace environment for all of our employees and took immediate appropriate action, is what Fox News Media said. So they said they're gonna take care of it and everything like that. So some more of the details of the lawsuit. This is where things got juicy. This is the part you may not have known. He also claimed, Fawcett, who's 27 years old, again, claimed that when he started working at Fox in 2019 as an entry-level production assistant working on Lou Dobbs' show, he encountered Andrew Napolitano on an elevator at the Fox News headquarters. He alleged that Napolitano made sexually suggestive comments and stroked his arm. And after getting off the elevator, according to his lawsuit, he told some colleagues about the incident, and they immediately started laughing, is what he said. And they said, quote, it was common knowledge that Judge Napolitano sexually harassed young men at Fox News, and even happened to one of the plaintiff's co-workers, is also what his lawsuit said. So again, some of these allegations they said have happened in front of folks, people knew about it, and all this happened. First off, is this a surprise to you that Napolitano, first off, had to separate from the network from these allegations, and that also he was harassing young male assistant producers when we've seen this happen to so many women working at Fox News?
No, I don't think you can be surprised because they set a precedent with the Roger Ailes situation, right? They basically was like, all right, it's not that sexual harassment is wrong, it's expensive, right? Like paying out all of these lawsuits and all of these civil suits and stuff like that, it costs a lot of money. So we're gonna crack down on that type of behavior when we can. Cause I remember when the numbers came out, it was like in the tens of millions, if not close to hundreds of millions of dollars in money paid to previous employees because of people like Bill O'Reilly, because of Roger Ailes himself, et cetera, et cetera. And so they, the bosses had decided that they weren't gonna tolerate any of this stuff. Now, as far as the part where it's men being harassed too, I don't think it makes a difference. When you have a workplace culture where harassment is encouraged, or if not just, people just turn a blind eye, then you're gonna get this. People have all kinds of proclivities, Jayar, and far be it from me to make a value judgment as to who people wanna mess with or who people wanna harass, right? I can't say that I'm surprised that a man would be harassed at Fox News because that's been their history. That's been the culture of that place essentially from its inception.
But I guess it struck me more that it seems like there was a bit more protection for the men that worked around there. I mean, maybe because as we've heard stories previous that the men are the ones that were always on the one side of the harassment when women were on the back side of it. So then if you get men now being the target, I just wondered if, and maybe it's, I don't know, I guess it's a bit of consistency if you go with, we don't care about the harassed men either. I guess my naivete was that they would care about the harassed men because they can relate. In general, the powers that be can relate to them, and men don't like being harassed, know. But we can't relate to women being harassed.
That's 100% true. And it's funny, a guy like Judge Napolitano, the funny thing.
I don't think I didn't know.
The funny thing is, especially on Fox News, when you see them talking about something like the trans bathroom mandate, that these people are gonna go into bathrooms and molest children and harass little girls and blah, 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 blah. Oftentimes it's just projection. It's like, this is how I carry myself all the time. And so I'm gonna assume that a trans person's gonna do it too, because that's me, that's my boys, that's my peers. This is how we conduct ourselves. Why would we ever have an expectation that people don't behave that way? And when it comes to somewhere like Fox News, the proof is in the pudding that they foster a culture of harassment, a culture of berating people, a culture of, inappropriate sexual behavior, right? Like they foster that atmosphere. So that's why you often see, these accusations and this projection being lobbied to other groups and other areas of society, because that's what they themselves do all the time.
Yeah, it's a small spotlight about what happens in society in many workplaces, which is why it's still a problem. And many people who may come up and complain about it, they kind of get suppressed, and especially with a big corporation like this, an assistant producer. And again, this is why at first he did mention Austin Law, so he didn't say anything right away after the elevator incident, just because he's like, well, I got a job at Fox News. There's some upward mobility here that maybe I can get something done and pursue my career in a way. And we know people bounce around to different networks, even if he wasn't comfortable there, you got to establish yourself. And then you end up putting up with things. Again, this is a story that women have been dealing with since forever. So even as he points that out, it's one of those things that I'm sure many people reading and watching would go, okay, yeah, surprise. This is what we've been trying to fight against for so long. Now, I want to get to some of the details of Larry Kudlow, because this stuck out to me almost more so than what happened with Napolitano, because just of the length of time that Kudlow has been on the network. So let's go into some of that. So Fawcett's claims about Larry Kudlow in the lawsuit. His allegations about Kudlow include a claim that a phone conversation with staff, the host said that he would like to have a quote 3-way with Sandra Smith, She's another Fox News anchor. And on the call, according to the lawsuit, was Gary Schreier, who's the senior vice president of programming for Fox Business. So, okay, higher up that heard it, according to the lawsuit. But he did not reprimand Mr. Kudlow or indicate that the comment was inappropriate. The lawsuit claimed that another phone conference to talk about an appearance by Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, Kudlow asked, "Why don't we just let the Mexicans in?" He then said that we need more jalapeno pickers. And that's also according to his claim, in which he added that Schreier was on that call as well. So none of these things were addressed at that particular moment while Larry Kudlow went through all those things about jalapeno pickers and three ways with Sandra Smith. And I'm not sure if Sandra Smith was on that call, maybe, maybe not, but I'm sure she probably would have had something to say about that as well. And lastly, as I told you guys, don't forget about Byron, Representative, what was his name again? Representative Byron Donalds. I want to call him Johnson for some reason. Byron Donalds, who is a black representative Republican and from Florida. So also according to that lawsuit, in another phone call, he was talking about Donalds' appearance on the show, and Kudlow objected to the scheduling booking and allegedly said, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want the black on the show."
Again, not to beat this thing with a horse. Beat this thing like a dead horse. I always mess that metaphor.
I wasn't gonna correct you. I was just gonna say.
Look, it's one thing to go on Fox News's airwaves and be racially problematic. It's one thing to be Donald Trump and accuse all Mexican migrants as being rapists and drug peddlers, etc., and violent criminals, etc., etc. It's one thing to do that, but within the environment of a corporation, corporate is corporate, and this type of stuff gets you sued. This type of stuff gets you in court. This type of stuff costs you money. And if we know anything about any corporate environment, the first thing they ever want to do is cover their behinds. That's the number one rule of corporate. Rule number one, first, cover your own ass. And if you have an employee who's comporting himself in this manner and is being this bombastic about his, virulent racism, that's a problem. And that's the type of stuff that gets you taken to court. That's the type of stuff that hurts the bottom line. Of course, you got to step in, in front of this type of terrible behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if Kudlow's gonna get any kind of pushback, reprimanded, or even taken off the air over this type of thing. And also if representatives like Representative Byron Donaldson want to understand where they've been caping for the party and the way this network does things, to make sure that you know who you're talking to. He doesn't want the black on the show. Just remember that. I don't want that black. I want another Republican on. Anyways, we're gonna jump out for a second. We are gonna come back with members only for the next half hour of the show. Make sure you guys can sign up, get in. I think I'm correct on that. But anyway, goes. We'll see you guys in just a few more moments. Back with Woz. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Takeover Tuesday. JR rated version with Wosny Lambre, of course. For more stories, you guys. But first, I know I didn't get to many of these programming notes yet. You guys know everything that's going on. Also, by the way, you guys, membership, as I point out, I'm sorry, this is just, we moved over to, we're not any more ads here for the next 30 minutes. But I mean, if you're here anyway and you thought that I was talking about membership, let's go ahead and talk about membership. So your membership, of course, it keeps TYT sustainable and empowers us to continue to do what we do every day. We appreciate all the members. So if you look to sign up and help join the movement that is TYT, you'll be part of a change team that just won't stop. Of course, with your help, that's why we have this interaction things we do with everyone online, because we do this show with you, of course. So join at tyt.com/change. Sign up, make it happen. Be part of the whole community. We're a family here, you guys. You'll feel that right away. I mean, if you watch TDR in the mornings, you probably already have a dragon name. So we just know the feel already. So TYT membership, of course, sign up and have a good time with us. Let's get to this next story now in the rundown. Matt Damon revealed in an interview recently that he's finally stopped using the F word. No, not the other F word, the F word that refers to a slur that goes into the gay and lesbian community, of course. And so he pointed out how he's had this new awakening. And the response hasn't really come the way that I guess he was expecting from this revelation and the story he told, which the details might give you reasons why you understand it wasn't well received. So going into it from the Sunday Times, the word this is Matt Damon now in this interview that he did have in his revelation. The word that my daughter calls the F slur for homosexual was commonly used when I was a kid with a different application. I made a joke months ago and got a treatsy from my daughter. She left the table. So this is at a dinner table or some kind of table. I said, come on, that's a joke. I say it in the movie Stuck on You. She went to her room and wrote a very long, beautiful treatise on how that word is dangerous. I said, I retired the F slur, and then I understood. So that was his revelation. That was the coming to Jesus moment from Matt Damon on whether or not he should continue using the word first off in front of his kids, and then at a dinner table, and then in a joke, because he used it in a movie once. So some of the responses from folks once he realized what was going on, someone tweeted, everybody says nothing. The national news media says nothing. The trades say nothing. TMZ, nothing. Matt Damon tries to put his voice in it and says, y'all know I said the F word until like last Tuesday. And of course, everyone is responding to that. Sarah Hollowell also on Twitter said, does Matt Damon know he could have not told everyone that he only recently realized that slurs are bad? Yes, that was definitely my first thought. So after some of the pushback happened, which was much more broad than that, he responded and he talked to Variety. In a statement to Variety, Matt Damon did say that he has never used the word, quote, in his, quote, personal life, and does not use slurs of any kind. He also affirmed that he understands why the interview led to so many to assume the worst. He goes, I've never called anyone, and I guess he said the word again or wrote it out, the F word in my personal life, and in this conversation with my daughter was not a personal awakening. I do not use slurs of any kind. I've learned that eradicating prejudice requires active movement towards justice rather than finding passive comfort in imagining myself as, quote, one of the good guys. And given that open hostility against the LGBTQ plus community is still not uncommon, I understand why my statement led to many assume the worst. As far as I can be, I stand with the community. Okay, is he off the hook? Is he canceled? It's just, I mean, it's the I think you're muted, Was. It's the fear of the cancel culture that may happen next. But then, bro, you're kind of telling us who you are.
Here's the thing, Matt Damon has kind of made a living, basically convincing America that he's this extremely likable guy. And I think what we've seen throughout the years, even before this, I remember the Project Greenlight episode where he explained to the lady who wanted diversity behind the camera. He's like, we got like 2 actors doing diversity already. We don't want to empower any Negroes or people of color as producers or directors. We did the diversity part already. Get out of here. Right? I think over the years we've noticed that Matt Damon is a bit of an a-hole. which is a problem for Matt Damon if your job is to convince people that you are in fact extremely likable. However, these are the kind of things I think we get a little bit too bent out of shape about, to be honest with you. Matt Damon and whatever words he might use in his personal life, obviously we would hope that he's not walking around calling people the F word. That would be horrible, terrible, brutish behavior. However, like, the reason why I tend to not give a damn about it, because I think about the sort of inverse of this, where we put too much stock in the people who do say the right things all the time. Say the right things. I think we have a habit of sort of deifying these people who know all of the cues to get liberals, sort of get them going, right? Like, when people say the right thing, we tend to move in the direction of they're great because they know how to speak. And I think that's kind of crap. That's why it's kind of like, I'm not gonna sit here and burn Matt Damon at the stake for being an idiot about what words to say, whether it be in his personal life or, what words that he's saying when he's giving an interview to a publication. So yeah, I don't want to see Matt Damon get fired for the rest of his life, even though he's rich beyond words at this point.
So there's the thing. So this happened when Trump was in office, when he first got in office, and black folks, Latinos, whatever, were like, they weren't as outraged as many others in the country because we've seen oppression. Yeah. And so members of the community that he's honestly going after with the way he uses the term, they're not unfamiliar with hostility and hatred and having to move through life, hiding yourself and all that type of stuff. So I think it's less of a surprise to the people who are the targets of these types of things. And it's more of a surprise to people who did think Matt Damon's this great guy. So I understand I guess you're not taking much stock in it because you're not surprised in a way.
I'm not.
So you're not disappointed. You're not going, oh my God, did you know Matt Damon says the F word? Yeah. And when people say the N word, there's things that people say, well, what do you think, Jayar? I'm like, well, honestly, you know what? All I do is take note of who you are. I don't need to go and then start fight with you, and I don't need to then go drag you around the parking lot. It just, in my mind, I don't need to exert that kind of energy for you just because you're a piece of garbage. If I learn that you're a piece of garbage, I understand that, and then I move through life to make sure I understand who you are. Now, the people that are disappointed and worried, and this became a story, is because so many people take this stock in him being a good guy. I don't care that he's not a good guy. I don't care that he is a good guy. I'm not invested in Matt Damon, but I do understand the people that have understood that they may have felt some kind of inspiration from him in his films, felt they could be like him, and there's a letdown. I just told my kid the other day, because we're gonna talk about DaBaby too, and he's a fan of DaBaby. And I said, man, it's one of those things that once you meet or find out something about the people that we used to call heroes, I don't even like that term, but people that you like their work, you have to understand that they're flawed human beings. And you have to make the decision of whether or not that's enough for you to not deal with them anymore, or whether or not you're gonna try and figure out, or they try and figure out what they're gonna do about their flaws. That's where I think some of the comeback comes from. Yeah, I don't think there's like, we're so afraid of being called out for being bad people or doing or saying bad things. Get called out and then respond with some kind of, with something that will fix yourself. And if you don't think you need to be fixed, say that and then continue the fallout. It's if that's what you want, that's what you want. And in many of these cases, these people are rich and famous already and they're set for life, so they can just kind of fall off the face of the earth and be just fine. But the worry comes from people that love these folks so much. And honestly, it hurts people that didn't know it. So I mean, I guess I can see both sides of it. So personally for me, I wasn't surprised, but for people who are surprised, it's time to stop worshiping these people.
Jayar, you know it's funny, you mentioned me not being surprised. I think back to the first time that I watched The Martian, and I was like, this movie sucks, right? And there's a bunch of people who swore by it. Then it dawned on me, like, that movie is basically Matt Damon by himself in Mars tending to crops and stuff. And so if you buy into Matt Damon as a likable guy, a guy you wanna hang out with, The Martian works for you. me personally, I always thought the guy was kind of a dick. So like I watched the movie and I was like, this is whack. I don't want to watch this. This is terrible. And so yeah, I think this is just a continuation of that. I'm not surprised that Matt Damon is a bit of a D-bag.
Yeah, and the thing is, he has a platform. And that's where the hard part is. He does have a platform. They do have people that listen to him, and I don't know if this would directly go to people then taking the next step for hatred towards folks, But just because they hear him telling jokes, but the defense does start to come for him to be able to tell these jokes, and then again, it goes back to other stuff. The people that want to jump out and defend him for having his right to say what he wants to say, and it's just a joke. I just take note of who you are, because I know that you tell those jokes. I know that you may talk about the LGBTQ plus community in that way too. And it's good to be on notice of who these people are, honestly. And that's the one thing you can do. I know Matt Damon's not at political rallies saying these types of things. That's where the danger came in for Donald Trump, because then he has followers that act on it. And people already have this feeling in their gut when it comes to these types of topics. So I think he kind of adds to the positive nature of what they think is a good way to go. That's the biggest thing that I think he's gotta. If you say openly that you just learned this, say openly that anyone else who just learned this needs to go the way that I've gone and stop it. Like, just finish it off. There's just one last step. Give me that PSA, that's all. Because right now the PSA is, it was a joke. I don't know how old his daughter is. My daughter had to tell, if your daughter had to tell you about it, bro, I think you already knew. Honestly, you just like the joke is what it is. Let's see if people have something to say about this, because I'm very curious as what you guys have to say before we jump to this next one. And we have a little bit of time left. Anybody on there? Let's go to Twitter. I bet Twitter's all over it. No, but there's good stuff on Twitter. Jayar Jackson and Big Waz on the Damage Report today. It's an embarrassment of riches, and I'm here for it. I hope you're enjoying your day off, John. I wonder what he's doing, because I know I am. This is from Laura Brack, of course, on Twitter. I forgot to say her name, I'm sorry. Type with love and respect for all. Love it, Laura. I wanna know what anyone had to say about Damon, because I'm really curious. If not, it may have been a little too quick because we just went through that story. But we do have Kita Boot Forever, new members. Welcome to Tier 3. Kita Boot, thank you very much. Let's go to one of these other from Joe Manchin and Lindsey Graham. If it's hard, if it was hard for Joe Manchin to look for, so this from Peter Hamby. For Joe Manchin to look for bipartisanship, it'll be a lot harder after the Graham and Kovid was found within Lindsey. Sorry, Wosnia. I'm not sure if you had something to say about this before. I kind of, that tweet was a little bit, I'm not sure if there was some background information that I missed from it. But also from Non-Human Humanist, also on a super chat. Swiss indoor masking mandated since more than a year, and it was never lifted. And the vaccination rate is similar to the US. Government requirement helps workers in businesses. So Non-Human Humanist was saying that the one difference is they kept their mask mandates in place, and it looks like it's all working out just fine for them. We'll see where it goes from there. I want to read one more before we get to this next story, which I guess kind of mirrors a bit of the Matt Damon story we just finished. But Grandma's Sunshine Dragon says Pete Ricketts won't make mask mandates in my state. Kids are supposed to wear their masks on their honor. What kid is going to wear a mask if all their schoolmates aren't? Big hugs to Jayar Waz and the Dragons. Yeah, this is one of those things. Those states like Florida and I think Tennessee is one of the next ones that's starting to threaten schools with funding if they have a mask mandate for children going into school, and I guess staff as well. And then they're leaning on we'll see if the 6-year-olds keep their masks up, or we'll see if the 10-year-olds want to even have a mask. We'll see how it works. But yeah, I'd like to finish off you guys with this next story that we've had apparently some trouble getting to on the show, because John wasn't familiar with DaBaby. We know John's history with music. Let's go straight to it. Hip hop artist DaBaby has lost many more of his bookings and gigs that he has upcoming after his appearance at Rolling Loud Music Festival in Miami last Saturday. During that his appearance and his concert there, he went on a rant, which he said to the audience, in part. If you don't show up today, if you didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, or any one of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases, then put your cell phone lighters up. That was part of the rant. Another part of the rant said, if you don't go and drop on your knees and suck this and that in a parking lot or do that, it was definitely slanted towards an anti-LGBTQ message to his audience. Now, when I first heard it, it was one of those things where it's an automatic, people back in the day would say, oh man, that's so gay because it's so bad to be that way. And when people at these concerts and they say, oh, put your lighters up if you got $100 in your pocket, just to try and stunt. Oh, all the haters, put your hands down, all that type of stuff. And he equated that to being gay. If you ain't gay, put your lighter up. But his connection to it was that gay is bad. And it's one of those automatic go-tos for what's the most negative thing I can think of? And it pushes that same narrative that honestly in most, I guess for lack of better words, woke circles, you realize that's kind of a dumb message. Where's that message really going? Who are you speaking to and what is it you want to get from it, especially at your concerts? People go, oh yeah, man, I don't do that stuff. You know who I am? And many of them do that stuff and then try and hide it and cover it up and hate on other people. But either way it goes, after this all happened, once that rant made it to social media, of course, fans and media figures all began calling him out, I believe as they should have, for his rhetoric. So while he also made other comments that admitted that they were insensitive, but also you guys don't understand, this is one of the first things he said, you guys don't understand the rapport that I have with my fans. If you weren't there, you don't know what the energy was, they love me and all this stuff, right? But he did eventually release an official apology on his Instagram after he doubled down a few other times to lay his claim to being able to say such things without, any pushback from fans or people that just kind of listen to his music. So his apology on Instagram said, social media moves so fast that people want to demolish you before you even have the opportunity to grow, educate, and learn from your mistakes. As a man who has had to make his own way from very difficult circumstances, having people I know publicly working against me, knowing that what I needed was education on these topics and guidance has been challenging. I appreciate the many people who came to me with kindness, who reached out to me privately to offer wisdom, education, and resources. That's what I needed, and it was received. I want to apologize to the LGBTQ+ community for the hurtful and triggering comments I made. Again, I apologize for my misinformed comments about HIV/AIDS, and I know that education on this is important. Love to all, God bless. So the thing, the HIV/AIDS line came with the whole message about, hey, if you ain't gay, you're a good guy. So that's again connecting the HIV/AIDS and that transmission of that to being a gay disease, which of course is another old thing that's always been said. And like, oh, you wanna look out now because the gays, they got HIV and AIDS. So it was all encompassed in this whole thing, and apparently he's learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what people want in these instances, right? Like a prominent person, public person comes out, says or does something stupid, apologizes, is reprimanded, by the way, right? Like he's gonna lose a lot of money from having done this stupid thing. And then like, what else do people want, right? Like he's paid a price for it, like literally. He's lost money. He's finally come out and apologized. And ostensibly, going forward, he's not gonna be this stupid and wrong-headed about these issues. Like, I don't know what else we're supposed to take from this, except for, I think people who really care about this type of stuff need to understand something too. This is a guy who comes from a really, a tough, disadvantaged background. That's a one. So it's one of those things in our culture, in liberal left culture, there are these sainted identities, right? Whether it be black people, whether it be poor people, whether it be gay people, these sort of identities that we decide are sainted. Well, this guy's from one of those sainted identities, but there's something that comes with that, right? Like this guy in real life was being robbed at a Walmart, killed the dude, and was justified in court afterwards, right? Like this is this guy's background. This is where he comes from. So, oftentimes people from those backgrounds are not as enlightened as to, the sort of sensitivities that come with public speaking as it pertains to marginalized and traditionally persecuted groups. And so what do we do with these people? Do we allow them to get better at these deficiencies, or do we just throw them out with the trash and say we're wiping our hands with them and never dealing with them again, right? I would hope that as a society, as a community, that we could see DaBaby losing all of these bags. And him, by the way, this is an A-list rap artist. Like he's, one of the top headliners at these festivals. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake for this guy. And I would think that he would recognize that he wants to stay A-list. And so it's gonna be smarter moving forward. I would just hope that us as a consuming public, we can let these guys have the space to fuck up and move on afterwards.
Well, that's the thing. Well, he has to allow himself to. Because the first response is always, and okay, I can't understand it, but personally, but I guess I can understand it since I keep saying it. There's a pride around being contrite, or pride around when someone responds to something you do, actually saying, oh, my bad. Instead, it's, you don't have the right to tell me what to do.
Right.
Now, what frustrates me is pro athletes, they get this, and many of them may come from similar backgrounds. They get this education and training on how to talk to the media. That's why every athlete after a game, especially an important one, says, well, both teams played well. I just want to congratulate the other team. Yeah, they beat us. Yeah, you may have seen cameras catch me on the court, call him a stupid MF dumb bastard. Yeah, we know the way athletes really maybe interact when they're competing, but afterwards they can't portray that on camera because that's bad for the brand because people don't know you. So nobody knows DaBaby. Not no one, but people, broad general public doesn't know him. They know about his lyrics and what he wears and smile and all that stuff, and they like him. And then when you get disappointed by someone seemingly hate who you are, and maybe some of his fans fall within that group, you gotta realize that your fans, they only get a snapshot of who you are. So whoever it is you are, maybe you wanna tell them. And then if they get a wrong idea of it, you gotta be contrite. And if you need to learn. And maybe you need to have some handlers around you like these pro athletes do to tell you, hey bro, shut the F up. And then start learning. Do something constructive for your life and for your outlook, and maybe people will forgive you. But when the canceling happens when when these people that are in the spotlight don't take heed to what's been told to them and fix it. They just double and triple down and go, you're not gonna stop my pride. Now people hate you, and it's gonna be a problem from now on. Maybe someone else can take this as a warning shot to not go in this direction. You mess up, learn from it, and publicly do it because you're a public figure. So that's just my thought on. Again, thank you guys thank you first off, Woz, for being here with me today on the Damage Report.
Of course.
Appreciate you. I think you're a little sick today, right?
Yes, I'm under the weather, but we gotta pull through for the Dragons.
I appreciate you. Once I noticed that, I was like, man, there's a double down effort on helping me out today. I appreciate you coming on. We thank you guys, Dragon Squad, for being here. Tomorrow is not a JR Wednesday. We'll see what happens there. Will they hold the fort down? I hope so. But today has been great. Thank you guys for joining me again on Takeover Tuesday, JR rated version. We'll see you next time on the Damage Report.
You know what it is. Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richey. Good to be with you. We got a lot on the agenda today. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking down news of the day with me, none other than Adrian Lawrence, TYT contributor, attorney extraordinaire, and author. And joining me in the bullpen to debate critical race theory, secondary education, will be a guy named Christian Watson, spokesperson for Color Us United and host of the Pinson Politics podcast. He should be fun. Top story. Ladies and gentlemen, a 19-year-old young black male went to a party at a known racist home. He ended up dead in the attic from a gunshot wound, which the authorities said was a suicide. However, that decision has been overturned in a little-known legal remedy known as a coroner's inquest. Wow, here's some background. The coroner said a black Missouri teen committed suicide in the attic of a man known for racist social media posts, but a jury disagreed. More than 3 months after a black Missouri teenager, Durante Martin, was found dead at a party hosted by a man whose social media can be best described as how to be a pro-racist, a Missouri jury coroner's initial findings and declared the 19-year-old's gunshot wound was not self-inflicted. Let's put a picture of this young man. That's him. That is 19-year-old Durante Martin. Died inside of an attic from a gunshot wound that the authorities said was self-inflicted. If you were to believe their theory of the event, you would have to believe that this young man drove 27 miles to a home he had never been to before in his life, that he decided to go upstairs into an attic that he had never been in his life, and then kill himself, even though there was absolutely no indication that he was suicidal. The person who is now at the center of this investigation, the man who is the known local racist, let's put his picture up. You see him, take a good look at him. He will be arrested soon. He has not been arrested yet. His name is James Wade. On April 23rd, Durante Martin attended a party with friends at a rural home in Fredericktown, Missouri. The 6'3", 250-pound former high school football star was attending an 18th birthday party for the daughter of James Wade, the local known racist, whose home was adorned with multiple Confederate flags. There's more. Wade was known for sharing racially charged posts on white Facebook. Yeah, I said it right, white Facebook. Including one with a picture of a black man in chains captioned, "My great-great-great-grandfather's tractor." Another meme featured a black dog with the words, "I had a black dog once, I named him food stamps." But Wade insists he's not racist. He says he just found those memes online and he just decided to repost them. Has nothing to do with racism. He's not racist whatsoever. But Wade could not explain, ladies and gentlemen, how Martin, the 19-year-old kid, ended up in his home in the middle of the night with a bullet to his head. In a 3:01 a.m. call to 911, Wade claimed to have heard a gunshot during the bash and found Martin dead shortly after the homeowner returned from fishing in the middle of the night on his daughter's birthday. I know that already sounds crazy, right? There's no way in the world him making that 911 call makes sense. What's even more ironic than his story is the fact that the local authorities chose to believe him. Witnesses say that Martin seemed paranoid that evening, while others believe Wade was involved in Martin's death with 2 other partygoers. At least one witness statement claims that Wade killed the teen. A county pathologist performed an autopsy and determined that Martin committed suicide, even though Martin's body did not have soot. It did not have the imprint of the gun. It did not have the deposit of gunpowder. Nothing that would indicate a self-inflicted wound. No evidence whatsoever this was a suicide. When confronted with this information, you know what the coroner said? The coroner said, oh, gee, I actually washed it off after I finished the autopsy. That's what the coroner said. There's more. But this young brother, 19-year-old Martin, had a mother. The mother knew better. Martin's mother didn't buy it. The family commissioned their own autopsy, which contradicted the initial determination that Martin caused his own death. Ladies and gentlemen, they brought this before a judge and a jury. Most families are not in a position to do what these people did. They had to pay money for this, a lot of it. They took it before a jury, and the jury said, in less than 2 hours, the jury overruled the county coroner and determined that the former football standout was actually killed by violent means. The finding means that investigators must now determine who is responsible for Martin's death. Put up this guy's picture again. The alleged killer, according to the witnesses at that party. That's the one that the witnesses testified, hey, he did it. They even told the deputies who investigated this crime, and the deputies went on stand and said, their testimony did not corroborate the evidence, and they let him go. My dear sister Adrian, you're an attorney at law. Help make sense of this.
Unfortunately, there is no way in the world you can justify this at all, as other than the system enabling this racist slaughter of this young man. You know, when there is an actual suicide by especially a gun, a firearm, there are a number of indicators that a coroner would have found and seen and cited to. Those things were absent here. There is, no imprint necessarily on his face at all or anywhere near him of a gun. And there's nothing there. And the fact that this coroner was so willing to lie to support this man, Wade, it's wild to me. You always have to ask yourself, what is it that the system, that the officers, that the coroner has invested for the fact that they are willing to stick their neck out to protect murderers, to protect people who are criminals? And all we can really say is white supremacy. But we also have to bear in mind where this was. I think it was Fredericktown, Missouri. The fact is that the NCAA had issued a warning back in 2017 for Black travelers. Don't go through Missouri, you need to be safe. And I have family from Missouri. All of my parents are from there or whatnot. I don't go there. It's the fact that we have places in our country where people just aren't safe who look like you and me. And they're not safe from the system, they're not safe from citizens. And this story shows us that there is such a battle when it comes to getting justice when we are hunted down and murdered.
Another dynamic of this story that really convinced the mother the entire narrative from the killer was incorrect, was a lie, was the fact that during this time, this young man had an injured arm. And if you were to believe what the would-be or potential killer said, you would have to believe that somehow his arm was no longer injured and he was able to physically pull this off. The mother put a lot of things together based on her insight and knowledge, and she was able to get this coroner completely overturned. I'm shifting gears. There's a really sad story of a young 14-year-old who was allegedly hit and injured by a cop. Okay, by a patrol officer. An East Atlanta mother is seeking justice after her 14-year-old son, Coda, after he obtained serious injuries from an alleged hit and run by a California Highway Patrol car. A witness who runs a YT channel called LA Confidential captured the incident during his live stream. Here it is. Wow. Coda's mother, Sara Carventes, has since hired an attorney with the help from volunteers, has been able to draw awareness to the incident. We're going to help draw awareness to this incident. This is a quote from Sarah on what Isaac's condition was like when he came home that night. He was distraught. He couldn't even focus his eye vision on me. It was horrible. You could tell that something was wrong and he couldn't talk correctly. He was slurring his words. Sarah says that even a month after the incident, Isaac is still suffering from a concussion and shoulder injury. Let's put up a picture of Sarah and her dear son, this dynamic duo. Look at that. Look at that. On video, you see a patrol car hit a child. Okay, maybe you were careless. Maybe you made a mistake, Mr. Patrolman. But what you did after that is completely 100% criminal. And it shows why you don't deserve that badge. Here's some more details. A community activist and the boy's mother claimed that the officer didn't stop to help the boy. They also said that several individuals tried to report the hit and run to other officers who were patrolling the area, but not a single one would take their report. Evidence of a guilty conscience, evidence of a cover-up. Also evidence that they may have known exactly what happened. Somebody may have told them, maybe the person who did it. The activists are calling for the CHP, California Highway Patrol, to reveal the name of the officer who hit Isaac and did not stop to provide aid. They are calling for the officer's immediate termination, as well as the officers who refuse to take a report from the community. Every single one of them need to be locked the hell up. Every single one of them. They need to go to jail. They need charges. This is a 14-year-old kid. And if we're not outraged by this, if we're not outraged now, you know what happens if we don't do something now? It becomes more extreme. The behavior becomes more aggressive. You have to check things like this when it happens. According to a video by user Long Beach Audits, the officers, plural, involved are these two guys. Put them up, put up the picture. According to Long Beach Audits, that's them. Another witness also shared that Sarah, their confrontation, shared with Sarah their confrontation with the white officer, which she shared on Instagram. Let's go to this video.
I know who he is. Let's figure out what's going on. That's a hit and run. That's a hit and run, dude. That's a hit and run. Go. That's a hit and run, dude. That's a hit and run, dude. Go.
Are those the good cops everybody keeps telling me about? You see, when people tell me, listen, Rashad, there are way more good cops than bad cops. Where are they? Where's the one good cop out of all of these cops who were alerted that night that a hit and run had just taken place, and not a single one of those cowards decided to take a damn police report for that 14-year-old kid who now has slurred speech, reduced motor skills, has impacted his mobility, family torn, police division deciding not to be transparent with the information, a cover-up evidenced by the conversations that happened immediately afterward. Where are the good cops? Adrian, where are the good cops?
I think that's a really good question. The fact is that, unfortunately, under California law, that cops generally do not have a duty to render first aid if someone is bleeding or if they need help in some way, but otherwise to call EMS to get help. In this situation, because the cops were the ones who caused the injury, you would think the basic duty would be to call at least EMS. And it really speaks to the fact that individuals are not here to protect and to serve, that the value placed on human life it's nil, it's very little. This is a child, they hit him on his bike. How do you justify that? And to keep these officers on the force and they're supposed to quote unquote serve and protect, yeah, right. They can't even take the basic general human decent thing to check on someone after they hit them with their car. let's be real here. These people should not be in a position where they're supposed to be looking over humanity in our society.
What kind of job, Adrian, would make you dismiss your humanity? I mean, damn. There are dope dealers and gangbangers that are stopped for a 14-year-old. Okay, people that would be dismissed by others in society as immoral, but they would protect the 14-year-old. So what are you telling me these cops are? What are you telling me this cop is? Who would hit a 14-year-old, speed away from the scene, and absolutely render no aid, nor his colleagues who were there hearing the witnesses say, this is a hit and run that just happened by one of your guys. Can we get some help here? Yeah, so here's the thing. California law says you don't have a duty to render aid. So explain this to me, Adrian. Why is it that police officers seem to want all of the authority, but none of the responsibility associated with it?
Well, it's because that authority is power. People aren't necessarily here in that role because they do want to help society to uplift, to make change. Maybe some people do come into the academy with, those high hopes. But the reality is that when these officers, oftentimes after they spent years or so much time on the force, the power trips that you see go on, the lack of, truly seeing people and the humanity in individuals, that probably starts to wear away. And as someone who went to school to be law enforcement, and I do have a number of friends who are either in law enforcement or former, I watch them change. I watch their character change. I watch them just become jerks after a certain amount of time. But as one of my closest guy friends, I remember talking to him one time and he said, AJ, I am exhausted. I just spent the last 12 hours sitting in the hospital holding the hand of a 4-year-old who was raped in the Bronx. And after you see those things again and again and again in society at its worst, I think it changes you as a person. But of course, that's not to say that every officer is like that, but that is to say that there are people who do not see the humanity in others. Some of it is caused on the job and some of it's just a result of being a horrible person. But either way, they don't need to be in that position.
I was tagged on Twitter by a fan of TYT. And he started by saying he's a recovering racist. And that he hopes that other racists see themselves in some of the commentary and segments I do here, that he's a recovering racist. I thought it was transparent and fascinating because it proves that there's a spectrum here, meaning correction can take place for those who are open to the process. And I believe the same for everybody, regardless of the profession they belong to. You have to start mandating consistent psychological evaluations of police officers, because the same officer you hire on day 1 is not the same officer on day 1,000. And if you do the psychological evaluations, at least you have an opportunity to see signs and provide corrective measures so that you don't get to that point where you can hit a damn 14-year-old kid and keep riding like nothing happened. We got more on the other side. Stick and stay. It's indisputable.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views.
Damn.
All
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk and Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right?
Wow, man.
I can see the void.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's fantastic. It's a story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a lot of comments. I will read as many as I can, all right? Thank you all for chiming in. Let's go to TYT member LMG15. Dr. Rich and Adrian are always a great hosting combo. Agreed. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon. I read the story early and it triggered a memory. Whatever became of all those black men who were found hung earlier in the Black Lives Matter protest? All were deemed suicides, but all were suspicious. Anyone see anything about investigations, or were they just swept under the rug as usual? Yeah, super chat. Bernard the Kiwi Dragon, the coroner washed off the evidence, ? It turns out to be a lie, which is just as bad. I'm sorry, but how is this coroner still on a job? I understand what you meant, yeah. How is he still not arrested? That's my question. I know y'all are like, Dr. Richard want to lock up everybody, lock them all up. Everybody needs to go to the pokey. Okay, Katrina Simpson. Was the coroner a medical doctor just appointed to the position? Not sure, but I'll research what their background was. Shamira Hill, love your show, Dr. Truth. Please continue to keep us aware and thank you. And thank you, I appreciate that. Artist definition. Dr. Rashad all the way, he really helps the world realize what's wrong under the carpet. Thank you. Mary says the coroner got paid. Perhaps, but sometimes That good old boy white supremacy system is all the payment they need. Jax Drax. I can't even imagine how many murders of black people have been falsely ruled as suicide. That's the question I had immediately. Tahara Kathleen, this poor kid will never be the same and will need money for therapies. Yeah, agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, my next story. Miami Beach officers face battery charges after violent arrest at a hotel. 5 cops are being arrested and charged. Here's the first video.
Here, Sergeant Perez comes back. You'll see this right here. Watch there. Okay. Did you see that kick there? Okay. There it is in slow motion replay. So that's 3 times by Sergeant Officer Perez. So for these actions, Miami Beach Police Sergeant Jose Perez is being charged today. We then have Miami Beach Officer Kevin Perez. This video appears to show Kevin Perez kicking Mr. Crudup at least 4 times. Let's see. You see the back there? That's Officer. That's a different angle. These are body-worn cameras at this point.
So sad. The sergeant, the man who is supposed to be in a position of law enforcement leadership, walks up to the scene and commits a criminal act. That is what happened here. If your boss is committing crimes as a cop, what do you think everyone else is going to do in uniform? There's more.
So you see, we think the officer's here saying back up, and you'll see him take about 4 steps back with his camera. Now you see Officer Sabater running in and tackling him there. Now, if you hold it right there, now what you see is after he's tackled, this is actually, these are his shorts, and that's a fist right there. And watch what happens next. Now, what you see there's a series of punches in the back rib cage area or kidney area, but it's on the back. You see that there? Now we have the body-worn camera video of Officer David Rivas, who appears to show Mr. Vaughn actively backing away from the Officer Rivas. Remember when you saw that initially? But nonetheless, Officer Sabater then pins Mr. Vaughn against the column. Well, approximately 12 seconds later, while he's being handcuffed, it's Officer Rivas, thank you, who's repeatedly striking Mr. Vaughn, as I said, in the ribcage area.
These cops are being held accountable. Now, why is this happening? It's not just because of the body camera, even though the body camera footage has helped significantly. It's also because of the movement of Black lives, because there is body camera footage of other officers assaulting citizens in this very same way, and nobody was arrested. That footage can still be seen on YouTube right now. Nobody went to jail. The movement, along with this evidence, this video evidence, has been able to make some changes happen. In a Monday announcement, Miami-Dade prosecutors stated 5 Miami Beach police officers have been charged with battery for 2 violent arrests made in the lobby of the Royal Palm Hotel on July 26th. According to State Attorney Catherine Fernandez Rundle, more charges may follow for Sergeant Jose Perez and officers Kevin Perez and Robert Sabater, Stephen Serrano and David Rivas. Let's put up a picture of one of the individuals who was caught up in this. That's a picture. Scared for his life. His name is Delonta Crudup. surveillance footage from the hotel shows officers kicking this young man whom they had been chasing. Why were they chasing him? For a damn illegally parked scooter. I'm not kidding you. An illegally parked scooter. He was handcuffed for an illegally parked scooter. And then they decided, after they arrested him, to beat him, to commit acts of actual violence and criminality. Investigators said the 24-year-old was riding a scooter and trying to get away from officers after he was accused of hitting an officer with the vehicle. This just gets more weird and insane by the moment. The man who was tackled, let's put his picture up. He was injured and beaten up as well. That's him. His name is Khalid Vaughn. Attorney David Frankel represents Mr. Vaughn and his friend Sharif Cobb, who he said also recorded the incident and was arrested for obstruction. So not only do they arrest this guy, they arrest a person who's watching the arrest. Adrian. And they got arrested, facing charges. They went to jail.
Yes. And you know what? A lot of people don't realize how that can completely and totally disrupt your life. If you do not have the means, the resources, you miss work, and then all of a sudden you're unemployed, all of these things, that it becomes just essentially a problematic wave that continues to rush and ruin a lot of people's lives. And these officers, come on, what, a illegally parked car? That's a citable offense. That's not
even a car.
Offense.
A damn scooter, a scooter.
Again.
Yeah.
Citable offense at most.
Yeah.
You know, if we just continue to see the abuses of power used by those in law enforcement, like this group here. And what it does is it really does undermine those who are actually trying to do something good, who actually are trying to protect and to serve. And you see here that these individuals who have been deputized are essentially acting as gang members, attacking and beating up people that they assume have no societal power whatsoever. And charging them with mere battery, it isn't sufficient. It needs to be far more, especially given that they trumped up the charges against these young men that they arrested, ruining their lives effectively. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see this prosecutor who not only said we're going to charge them, the prosecutor did what prosecutors are supposed to do. When you have an extreme violation of public trust, you have a press conference, you explain the facts, you be as transparent as you can be without compromising the integrity of the investigation. And you say, here's the theory that we're going with of what happened. And we're going to prosecute based on this theory. This is why we made these charges happen. And she provided the video. The video had graphics. I mean, the case is compelling, right? I mean, if you're a defense attorney for these cops and you saw that video, what are you thinking right now, Adrian?
Well, I'm thinking right now that those cops have a lot to be concerned about if this prosecutor actually intends to essentially do what they do to black and brown people, which is throw the book at you. And so if that actually happens, it would be a hell of a thing, because the message really needs to be sent to these rogue cops who are really just acting as street gang members, using their power and abusing their power and using the system against people. You know what? They need to know that it needs to end in the now. Otherwise, you actually will face consequences, because we all know there have been few consequences up until hopefully this point.
Yeah, well said. And remember, once again, this is a prosecutor. It did not take a new law. It did not take a statutory revision. It did not take police reform. It literally took one person in a position of leadership to say, we're going to do the right thing. This becomes your de facto reform right here. Now, we need the other reforms as well, obviously, but this holding these officers accountable for actual violations of the law should be the standard. And once again, the irony of it all, that individuals who take an oath, individuals who swear to protect and serve, to uphold the Constitution, to uphold the laws, they don't want to be upheld by those same laws. They don't want to be accountable to those same rules. It doesn't make sense to me. If you're a medical doctor, you are judged at a higher standard of accountability, a higher standard of care. but a police officer, not so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday?
You're still free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Give me my drink so I can leave, bitch! Give me my money now, bitch! Give me my money! Give me my money and my drink! Give it out, bitch! Let's clean up. Give me my drink so I can leave, bitch! Give me my money now, bitch! Give me my money! Give me my money and my drink! Give it out! Get out, bitch! Let's clean up, little. Swear to God, little punk bitch! I'm gonna make sure it's a mess for you, bitch. Okay, keep the money, keep the change.
That's not all. There's more. Another Karen has been caught on camera, this time at a Barnes & Noble cafe. The video showed the woman having a violent meltdown as she hurled slurs, cursing at employees behind the counter, wanting her drink, wanting her money. But that's not it, y'all. She did it again. Here it is. You know, I'm starting to feel like I'm watching National Geographic and we're observing Karen in her natural habitat, being argumentative and trying to belittle others. Adrian, what are your thoughts about the latest Karenicity you just saw?
You know what? Individuals like this, and particularly that one, they're a danger not only to decency, but definitely to society as a whole. Like, who acts like that? I get that you want your drink. We've all wanted our drink, but we don't act like that. And I get also people might say, and I'm sure this individual, once they were called out, say, oh, blaming it on the juice. No. I have had my fair share of a cocktails, and I've been perfectly fine and not acted a fool like that. And so we really have to go a little step deeper and realize, once again, these people are a danger. These people are problematic. I hope she was arrested and ostracized.
Yeah, so we don't have a report that she was arrested. I mean, maybe she was, hopefully she was. But think about this, the fact that she even feels emboldened to destroy property, not one time, but twice. And those are the times that somebody actually caught the video. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that this has happened multiple times. She gets angry, she breaks things, and she decides to insult staff members who are trying to serve her. Once again, walking in some extreme privilege that I would never be comfortable. I would never in my life in America be that damn comfortable to go up to a Barnes & Noble, destroy their property, or to a drive-through. I mean, damn, what would have happened if she broke the window, Adrian? Was she going to climb into the window? What in the hell was going to go down?
I honestly, I don't know, but you're absolutely right in terms of the audacity. It was turned up, and I heard a lot of people call it caucasity. Whatever you're gonna call it, I don't care, but you best call police. And they actually should be doing their job in this case, which is slapping her with a handcuff or two and taking her down to the station. But at the end of the day, people like this, again, dangers to society. People need to stop seeing these, white people as being innocent. Oh, it's not gonna be that bad. Like January 6th, how that was treated is, oh, it's not that bad. Black Lives Matter now, that's a problem. No, oh, no. People are dangerous, especially when they're emboldened and empowered by the fact that the system will do nothing to stop their recklessness, their racism, and their absolute and total nonsense.
Very well said. All right, we got more on the other side. It is indisputable. Stick and stay.
While the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it.
We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award.
Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, news and information channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox. I told you we were coming.
When you talk about it when it becomes a problem, our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock.
And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock, and we're gonna run you out of town, and we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country.
November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Back to back that I like. Say hi to the camera.
I don't like this.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a lot to cover. Let me remind everybody, please make sure you stick and stay after the show for a deep dive with Jordan Ewell, all right? Make sure you stick around. Remarkable program, great show. Indisputable TYT, that's on social media, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you join, follow us, all that good stuff. And on the YouTube page, we're at 156,000 subscribers. That's because of you. Make sure you subscribe to that page. It's free and it's easy. TYT member Argo Libre says, yes, Adrian, a simple day in traffic court can have devastating consequences for working class folks. Yep. Craig Crazy Flay, the music for Hothead Coffee Karen was off the charts hilarious. It really was, wasn't it? It really put the finishing touch. Yeah. All right, YouTube super chat. Jeffrey Ritchie, are we related? Don't talk to Latte Karen before she had her caffeine. May Money in the Building says Karen and meth don't mix. Yikes. Side note, can I suggest you have Jason Carter on your show one of these days? Adrian, your hair is on point. Jason Carter is actually a good friend of mine, and I may do that. I got some work coming up with the Carter Center in a couple of weeks, and I'll run into him for sure. Non-human humanist. I am from Europe, the origin place of white people. Never seen a Karen acting that crazy like yours over there. Is there a special thing over there? See, them fighting words. Now I gotta find Karens in Europe now. That's what has to happen now. Black Lights In. Internal Affairs actually has to do their job now. Yes. Chris Frederick. They clearly don't even care they're being filmed anymore. Brad and E. Nelson. Kidney punches, that's lethal force, people. It is. King T says, you can't make this stuff up, Doc. Thank God for body cameras is right, 100. Annette B, the first thing they say is comply. But how can you when they're killing you? And literally in that one video, the officer is saying back up. He's backing up and he still gets assaulted. Nothing to see here, move along says, I've met two good cops, both of them quit. Twitch, Captain Cornball. If that's how your sergeant acts, what kind of performance reports will it give you if you don't follow his lead? Another way, the barrel rots. That's a good point. Tracky 21. A parked scooter ain't gonna hurt anybody and doesn't take up that much space. Really? Okay. This story is very sad. This story is very, very hard to watch. I wanna warn you now. Ladies and gentlemen, cops pulled up to the wrong suspect, beat him up, and killed his dog. Here's some of the video.
Get on the ground now. You're ridiculous. Don't Get on your stomach now. Get on your stomach. Put on your stomach.
That dog's fighting. He was acting kind of stupid out here. Yeah. Are they gonna shoot the dog? Yep.
Get on the ground now. What the?
You could have tased them.
He was the wrong man. Wrong man. The dog was actually friendly until the cops started to attack the owner. He was the wrong man. Let me give you some more background. Police came across an agitated man with his dog in an empty parking lot in Bishop, California. Now the man, George Barlow III, is in intensive care. And his dog, dead. Police had received a call about a restraining order violation. No one linked to the call was ever found. But the two responding officers did see Barlow yelling outside a closed gas station on the property. Let's put up a picture of Mr. Barlow and his dog. A relative of Barlow posted something on Instagram. I want to read this. It says, I absolutely hate to share this, but my heart is broken for my cousin, his family, and our community. My cousin George fit the description in quotations. And because of that, he is in the hospital on life support and his dog is dead. He was not the person in question. The incident occurred early July 24th. My cousin George Barlow did not deserve to be brutalized like this. Nobody does. Law enforcement has a history of brutalizing Native citizens, and we receive little to no justice. I've been assaulted twice, and both times, law enforcement put the blame on me. The story is the same for many and other indigenous people in my community. See, we're stronger as a coalition. That's why I don't get caught up in narratives of us and them as it relates to those who are really my brothers and sisters in the struggle. I don't get caught up in that. And anytime somebody comes to me with it, I make sure they kill that noise around me. What happened to this man should have never happened at all. He should have received the benefit of the doubt, given the fact that these officers did not have complete information. They made an assumption, and their assumption, in my opinion, was criminal. Not only is he in intensive care, his dog is dead. I'm an animal guy, love my pets, like family. There's more. Let me read this other Instagram quote as well. Things are getting really ugly. White men are messaging and threatening indigenous women for speaking out. People are trying to slander George's name while he is fighting for his life. Googling his name and not realizing that it isn't even him, but a different person. So there are people looking at this story, Googling the name of this man who has been severely injured, life has been turned upside down, and they are assuming that he is the person that the cops were looking for initially. Wrong man. Adrian?
You know what, watching that, you're absolutely right. It's just gut wrenching. Not only the fact that this was someone's companion, their dog, that's also people's family members there. Yeah. And then for this man to have been assaulted to the extent that he is on life support, that it didn't need to happen. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the fact that we do have to work together and to fight this divisiveness and the us and them narrative, because the reality is that we are all going to suffer at the hands of white supremacy and police brutality if something isn't done. A lot of people are unaware of the fact that indigenous people they're killed more by police at higher rates than any other racial demographic, including Black people. And also, indigenous women are sexually assaulted and violated at far higher rates than any other racial demographic. And they're the ones who are, I think 70% are violated by non-indigenous men. So what we have here is essentially a people who are they're being murdered, they're being violated. The genocide continues. And when they speak out, they are silenced, and they do not have the big voices that a lot of other groups do. And so we all have to band together to stop this, because it's the only way that there will be change.
Exposing this is part of the process. Thank you for that insight as well. There's another story. A guy who's obviously a white supremacist, white nationalist, affiliated with the Proud Boys. He wants to become your next school board representative. He wants to be an elected official. I kid you not. Proud Boy candidate gets ripped by a local newspaper after his love for white nationalism is exposed. His name is Josh Wells. Let's put up a picture of Josh Wells. Josh Wells, a school board candidate in Haven, was the subject of a hard-hitting editorial by the Kansas City Star this week. The editorial, Ford explained how Wells had been exposed by the Midwest Youth Liberation Front for seeking to establish, and I quote, a white nationalism and or a pro-Western Christian theocracy with a protected white majority status, whichever one is more obtainable. Wow. Think about this. This guy wants to be in charge of children, okay? The newspaper noted Wells had been visited by the FBI for his connections to the Proud Boys on January 5th, one day before the insurrection at the US Capitol. Former US Attorney for Kansas, Barry Grissom, urged voters to remain vigilant. In this era of half-truths and lies that weaken our institutions of government that for years were respected, we take comments from white supremacists and people who are on the fringe, and we just now kind of shrug our shoulders like it's not a big deal. That to me is a cancer in our society. Well said. The Southern Poverty Law Center says the Proud Boys, rank and file Proud Boys and leaders regularly spout white nationalist memes and maintain affiliations with known extremist groups. Put his picture up again. Put his picture up. If you see this guy around any children, make sure to go the other way. This white nationalist is seeking to become a school board representative. We don't want that to happen. Adrian, they're trying to get into local office just as they were instructed to do by their Republican colleagues in the Congress.
Yep, that's right. They are following instruction. And the thing is, they are a lot bolder about it than they at least were in the 80s and 90s. And the fact is that we've always had white supremacists who are in positions of leadership in government, but now they have the audacity to be very open about who they are, and yet they are still supported. We as a society continue to regress. We are going backwards, clearly, because it's just like going back to the 40s and 50s. I guess Trump is getting his way in terms of making America great again, because we have this whole white supremacy mentality, and it is very much entertained out in the open, and no one is really doing anything about it.
Yeah, Trump's code was really, let's make America white, male dominated, bigoted again. That's what he wants. Adrian, always a pleasure. Tell everyone how they can connect to you, follow you on social media, and get your remarkable award-winning book.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. You can find me at Adrian Law on Twitter, on Instagram at Adrian Lawrence, and you can get my book anywhere books are sold, but also in the TYT store. That's Staying in the Game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, which is an extremely important book, particularly today when Andrew Cuomo was exposed for being the harasshole that he is.
Yeah, Cuomo just needs to hang it up. Good gracious, man. All right, and by the way, one day I will be able to say, Adrian, my book is sold wherever books are sold, but I don't have a book now. I don't have a book yet.
In time, it's coming.
All right, thank you so much. We got more, stick and stay.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. Now,
We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? So now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone.
Okay, sorry, I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it, we will settle it.
She's cute.
I didn't say that about Lori.
scandal at TYT.
Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always changed this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these comments and get to the next segment. Always a pleasure to have you. Okay, TYT member, Bodega Boy Wanda, I think. Even the freaking dog knows what cops are doing is wrong. Yeah. Make it see the silver-haired dragon. Cops in this country kill so many dogs each year that a specialist at the Department of Justice's DOJ, Community-Oriented Program Services office, says it has become an epidemic. The DOJ estimates that around 25 to 30 dogs are killed by cops every day. Damn. With some numbers as high as 10,000 a year. The totals could in fact be higher since most police agencies do not formally track officer-involved shootings involving animals. That's a staggering number. YouTube super chat. R. King 1 Garcia, disgusting and disgraceful. Those cops belong in jail. Yep, they had the wrong man the whole time. Mickey Mallory, and listen, even if they had the right man, that was wrong, okay? Mickey says, thanks for shining light on what happens in the darkness, Dr. Richey, my pleasure. Non-human humanist, does this man have a GoFundMe? We could show him support. It won't give the dog back, but could help. I'll research that. So, okay, we got something. There is a GoFundMe by the family. So here's what you need to search if you want to look up the GoFundMe. Go to the GoFundMe website and type in support for George Barlow and family. And that's spelled BARLOW, okay? Adrian for AG, she's gone, but she will make a remarkable AG. Good gracious. Wouldn't that be a shift in our democracy? Yes, Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, I have Mr. Christian Watson, spokesperson for Color Us United and host of the Pensive Politics podcast. Christian, good day. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Ritchie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about critical race theory, but we're going to talk about it, debate it here on the program. What are your thoughts about critical race theory and your alleged connection that it has to education in America, K through 12?
So critical race theory, just putting it very simply, because there are a lot of different definitions that a lot of people like to throw out. But critical race theory, as I best understand it, is a movement of a collection of academics who work in an interdisciplinary fashion to interrogate the role that they believe white supremacy and oppression has had and still continues to have in American society. And so essentially, it's based on a few key precepts. Number one, that white supremacy is a part of the definition of America's institutions. Number two, that the impacts of white supremacy, far from any sort of individual instance of white supremacy, are still impacting and hurting Black Americans today. And number three, you have to engage those impacts in a critical way, which means, as they would say, or at least as they said in the critical race theory, the key writings, you have to engage critically, you have to engage in a sort of activist way, especially in the classroom and abroad in political society as well. And so this is really being pushed in education, or at least many of these principles, I should probably say, are being pushed in education by the 1619 Project. Now, when many folks hear this, they're like, well, this is nonsense, it's fear-mongering, but it's not. Look at what Nicole Hannah-Jones has said in the essays that are within the 1619 Project curriculum and in her own personal statements. She said that slavery is foundational to America, that the editor for New York Magazine actually said that he wants to reframe history through a Black narrative, which puts slavery at the sort of forefront and the emphasis of what America is about. I mean, there are plenty of other essays in the curriculum that kind of do indict America's moral character. So I think that critical race theory principles are most certainly being used in a way that I think is not really appropriate for the classroom.
So let me go back to your original definition and understanding of critical race theory, because you go to some degree and then you don't go to the rest. Critical race theory does not mandate that you become an activist. That's not part of the lexicon of the theory. The theory itself basically says that due to the origin of how we started as a country, we have these biases that are built into policies, institutions, statutes, even the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution said at one point we were 3/5 of a person. The Declaration of Independence said that Native Americans are savages in the language of the Declaration of Independence. And then there are current modern structures that exhibit this same racial dynamic, where the disparity is connected directly statistically to a race variable. And you have to deconstruct that model, you have to reverse engineer that model and figure out where in the policy is it getting it wrong. Now, when you talk about K through 12 education, brother, you are well aware that critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 education. You know that.
Well, as I said, no one's reading Delgado, no one's reading Crenshaw, but I'm saying that critical pedagogy is a method that is being endorsed, especially by the curriculum of the 1619 Project, to teach certain concepts. I think that's a self-evident fact.
Okay, so let me correct you on something. It's pedagogy, and the pedagogy that's being taught, that's an educational style. That's a method of teaching. So a theory is not really pedagogy, it's your method of connection. Go ahead.
So the theory itself is implemented. So pedagogy is simply the way that the theory is implemented in the classroom. So even though critical race theory itself.
So explain that to me. Explain, how do you make it critical race theory when it's not critical race theory that's being taught? How do you connect the two?
I think you're kind of moving the goalposts here, Dr. Ritchie, respectively, because I never claimed that critical race theory itself, Delgado, Stefanik, Mary Matsuda, Crenshaw, they were being taught to K through 12 people, because they're not. I'm saying that the methodology and the principles of critical race theory are being taught, at least in the 1619 Project and across America. And I think that's
you say that you were a victim of critical race theory.
I think so, yeah.
And when were you a victim of critical race theory?
So again, I was using critical race theory as a proxy for its methodology. And
but that's not what you said. You said you were a victim. I read it, brother. I did the research on you. You said you were a victim of critical race theory.
And I was quite clear about what I meant. Yes, I was quite clear about what I meant. So for example,
when were you a victim?
I partook in collegiate debate. And collegiate debate, there's a few kinds of collegiate debate. There's policy debate, there's national parliamentary debate, and there's other kinds, there's British parliamentary debate. And in almost all of the debates, particularly in policy and national parliamentary debate, a lot of people use critical race theory arguments. Not only that, but many of the debate judges themselves are not only sympathetic, but formally critical debaters. It's not like critical race theory is simply being used sparingly by people as a wide array of arguments. No, critical race theory actually informs the structure of collegiate debate, whether it's terms like critique or what have you. Crenshaw has been quoted several times, Derek Bell on the idea of sort of Afro-pessimism, that's been quoted several times. Excuse me, Frank Wendelson, and the idea of Afro-pessimism, that's been quoted several times. So yeah, and because of those ideas that were dominant, I was not really accepted and allowed to be in collegiate debate by people. Well, I was allowed, but I wasn't really accepted by folks. And a lot of my arguments were considered to be offensive and ignoring lived experience. And lived experience being the core function of actually what critical race theorists believe. If you look at Words That Wound, Matsuda, Crenshaw, and Stefanik, and all of them say in their section where they define critical race theory that we use lived experience as a means of disrupting the narrative that ignores, black folks and their experiences. So yeah, I was kind of a victim.
Let me help you. First of all, brother, you are not a victim of critical race theory. Critical race theory is a theoretical and an advanced theoretical framework that poses a question and a framework for analysis. Nobody's a victim of that whatsoever. And you learned it in the right context. If you were engaged in critical debate in a collegiate atmosphere, that is the right atmosphere, that is the right societal construct in order to learn an advanced theoretical framework, no matter what that framework may be. But all theoretical frameworks pose a question and a concept for analysis. I know you're well aware of that. You were no victim, sir. Let me bring to your attention some elements in modern society that I would like you to answer without using critical race theory. Okay, let's do that.
Very well.
4 years of survey data shows that black students represent only 15% of total US students enrolled in public education. But they make up 35% of students suspended once, 44% of students suspended more than once, and 36% of students expelled. That's from the US Department of Education. They also found in their research that this disparity is not explained by more frequent or more serious misbehavior by other students, meaning their behavior was comparable to white students. However, their penalty was much more severe. Let me read you another one. And by the way, I like to always source my data. You can find that US Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. The New York City police officers were surveyed based on their stops. This was a survey after the fact. So this is not a lived experience survey. This is an actual data analytical survey. The data analytical survey showed that New York City, 88% of police stops involve Black and Latinx people, while 10% involve white people. Of those stops, 70% were completely innocent. So the data doesn't even justify them targeting Black and brown individuals. Another one, and you can find that information, New York Civil Liberties Union, stop and frisk data. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience a pregnancy-related death than white women, even at similar levels of income and education and health. You can find that data, the National Partnership of Women Families study. The next one, on average, black men in the US receive sentences that are 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted of the very same crime. You mean to tell me that I get 20% more time if I'm a black man convicted in America than my white counterparts and we are convicted of the same exact crime? There's another one. On average, in the US, black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed as white individuals with the same exact background as their white counterparts. That's another data stat. You can find that at the Poverty Action Lab. I'll give you one more. One study found that job resumes with traditionally white sounding names received 50% more callbacks than those with black sounding names. And they did this over and over again. They submitted the same education, the same experience, changed the name from Abdul to John, and all of a sudden companies started calling them back. Sir, those are dynamics of systemic bias implicit or hyper-aggressive racism that must be examined? Tell me, how do you back engineer that? How do you examine it without the use of critical race theory?
Well, first of all, so critical race theory, let's be clear about what it is, as we have been doing with this conversation. It is indeed a framework which would look at all of those things, and it wouldn't actually, what you're doing, Dr. Rich, you're actually kind of trying to interrogate a little bit. And words that wound, all of the critical race theorists, particularly Matsuda and Crenshaw and all of them who wrote that book, they're very clear that they actually presume that all racial disparities must have racist outcomes. And there is a conversation to be had about that, but it is not a conversation that can be scientifically approached if we are assuming that all racial disparities or all disparities, in any area must be racist because they are adjacent to racism. This is the flaw that I think Kendi makes how to be an anti-racist. But to answer a few of your examples, for example, the education thing where black kids are punished more at public school. Again, I think that if we look at something that is black adjacent and automatically say this is anti-black, we're endeavoring in a sort of an association fallacy.
Well, tell me, what do you think it is?
If you look at charter schools, for example, if you look at charter schools, many charter schools, black Americans actually outperform their public school peers, whether it's in college readiness, whether it's in subject readiness, and also whether it's in conduct as well. But when you have people pushing charter schools and more broadly school choice in certain areas like Chicago, what happened in Chicago was the superintendent of some of the schools and the teachers unions actually went against it. You're trapping black youth into a certain environment. So you should probably, instead of just looking at race as the only factor, consider, okay, how does that particular school treat certain kinds of infractions? And how might that impact, what that individual is doing? How is that individual's home life? All I'm saying is that it's important in any given situation, not to simply look at the surface, but to do what Plato said and inquire and interrogate the relationship between knowledge and opinion and try to get as close to knowledge as possible. Critical race theory does not do that because critical race theory, as they said in Words That Wound, presumes that certain things are true without investigating them. And in my opinion, going back to the classroom, that kind of mentality has no room in a system that is meant to educate people, to mold the man, mold the woman, as the ancients would think, in a way that is going to prepare them for life.
Brother, you said a whole lot without saying much at all. So let me help you here.
Which of my claims do you take issue with?
Well, the fact that you never really got to the core of how do you reverse engineer the obvious disparities that are connected to race that I just posed to you. Well, you cannot tell me. Go ahead.
Dr. Rishi, I must respectfully disagree, sir. I did. I told you explicitly that we have to look at these things through a multifaceted lens and not through a reductive, simplistic. I just gave you several examples as it related to the school thing. There are many different things that could account for the disparities in punishing. And in charter schools, in many charter schools, like those disparities just don't exist.
Just name a few, brother.
I mentioned family life. How does that particular school handle infractions? It does not have to be entirely linked to racist practices. But the problem is, Dr. Ritchie, critical race theory likes to see racism in terms of impact, not in terms of intent or value, or to the extent that intent or value mean anything. This is Kenny's definition.
Well, let me ask you
they must be correlated with impact.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that a New York City police officer or the New York City Police Department pulling over 88% of the individuals who are black and brown, a huge disparity in how they pull over people, and not even coming up with the result of more people being arrested, 70% are completely innocent of anything? Do you not think that is systemic? You think there's something else there?
Well, so I think two things can be true at once. You can have a systemic problem without the problem being necessarily racist.
But it doesn't mean it's not racist. But let me
Dr. Rich, you're kind of moving the goalposts.
No, brother, you say it doesn't necessarily mean that it's racist, which means you have left the door open for the fact that it could absolutely be racist.
Well, okay, well, perhaps, but we shouldn't jump to that conclusion. That's my point. The point is, because
when the data shows the disparity based on race, why would you not? And it's not jumping to a conclusion; it's interpreting the data. Why would you not say, listen, if 3 to 4 times black women who are pregnant experience a pregnancy-related death more so than white women with similar background, income, education, and health, why would you not say, listen, we need to make sure we take a closer look at how we're treating black women in this industry? Why would you not make that conclusion based on the data?
Well, again, I think our phrasing is very important. I think sometimes using the word we and how we are treating people kind of puts everyone on the hook. When if this is a racist problem, as you seem to believe it is, we should be looking for the actual people who are causing the problem. But back to the broader point, I do want to interrogate and investigate all of these issues, but I want to do so through a lens that is not simplistic and presumptive as critical race theory would have us do.
But I would love for you to present another one. So I'm asking you, brother, present another lens. Listen, critical race theory says, okay, a whole lot of bad stuff as far as disparities that happen, it can be traced back to a racist or racial core. And we have to check those things inside of our policies. You would admit that we have policies that unfairly penalize individuals of color more so than other groups. Would you not agree that we have policies like that?
So there are what you're asking, are there disparities in data? Absolutely, there's a disparities in data, but we have to investigate the disparities. Emerson made it very clear. We have to investigate what goodness is. We have to see why what is. And I think just taking a very surface level prima facie look at the data and saying, hey, this is a racial disparity, ergo it must be
but
racist.
It is by
fact. Well, facts are important, sir, which is why, and I want to understand the facts.
So the fact is, let me just make sure we're clear. You do believe in the fact that there are racial disparities based on these institutions, right?
Well, there are racial disparities do exist in data sets 100%. I want to get to why they exist. Is it because of racism? That's what critical race theorists think. I think that's a simplistic explanation to a multivariate problem. Life is a complex phenomenon, Dr. Ritchie. As you would know, sir, you're a PhD. You had to go through a lot of things to get your PhD. So I think that reducing this very complex and multifaceted world and a very complex and even more multifaceted human society, human interaction to one answer, because those answers have been emblazoned and sort of seen in the cultural atmosphere, is not the best thing to do. If I am wrong and these things end up being the cause of racism, actual racism, then yes, let's fight them, let's get rid of them. But I want to go back to something you said before.
Before you go there, and I will allow you to finish your thought. Critical race theory does not provide a singular answer as far as I apply critical race theory. I do understand that there are some instances where there's data, macro data, that cannot be codified in a racial dynamic. And we may not have access to that data. But what we do have, the access to the data we do have, shows clearly that an overwhelming truth is present. And the overwhelming truth, brother, is that these disparities break down with a racial significance. And yes, you could have meaning when we talk about 3 to 4 Black women being 3 to 4 times more likely to die being pregnant than white women. Well, that breaks down to a racial issue. That's a racial disparity. That racial disparity has something at its core creating that disparity. You have to investigate it. You're saying that it may be something else, but I'm telling you, you got the data. At least start there is my point. If you're not willing to start with what the data has concluded, you will never get to unravel the other lenses that you're talking about. And I'm with you, brother. I get it. You're saying let's be multifaceted. Let's make sure we have various lenses in order to examine these things. And you do. You need it from an equity standpoint. You need it from a gender bias standpoint. You need it from all of that. Okay. Wait a minute. You don't believe gender bias exists?
Well, Dr. Ritchie, I didn't say that, sir.
But you don't believe gender bias exists?
No, I didn't say that, sir. Okay. So here's what I'm trying to say, sir. So I think you did something in the course of your response there. So you said that the disparity reflects a problem, a racial problem. But as far as I can see, the line of your reasoning doesn't satisfy how that problem is racist. We haven't gotten there yet. Yes, that's correct. A racial disparity does have a context within the context of race because it is being measured by race. So when we measured Black women and the disparity between white women, that is something that is being measured by race. But that goes from being something a matter of, okay, Dr. Ritchie, so how is it not true? If we're measuring the disparity between Black and white women in terms of pregnancy, is that not being measured by race?
No, the study was not. So let me help you understand how the study
is
actually. Race is a
factor, though, of course, right?
Race, the disparity, is the outcome of the data. So let me bring you back to the study.
Well, I know.
The study examined income, healthcare, as well as education. Those are non-racial elements. That's what the study examined. The study with the New York City Police Department, it only examined the number of arrests, the number of stops, and the number of citations. It did not study it from a racial context. The US Black individuals are twice as likely to be unemployed than white was a measure, once again, of experience work-wise, education, and also age was put in that variable. And it showed that Blacks are less likely to be unemployed, more likely to be unemployed than their white counterparts. Now, none of those studies contextualized in the variable race. It contextualized everything else and said, but the outcome, the disparity, happens to have this amazingly unequal racial conclusion.
Okay, well, we can agree that race is indeed involved in understanding the disparity as a whole, right? We can agree on that premise. Okay, very good. All right, so when we go beyond that, though, you said a few moments ago, and we kind of have gone a lot of different ways this conversation. But you said a few moments ago that it is important to recognize the disparity exists, and we agree on that point. The disparity does exist, but it's also important to investigate the reason as to why the disparity exists, and we actually agree with that point. But when you said different lenses, you mentioned gender bias, race, equity, and Dr. Ritchie, respectively. I don't think that if an inspector goes into a house and just looks inside the house and never looks outside the house, that he's actually really inspecting the entirety of the house. So the house of critical race theory and critical, pedagogy and critical concepts include the idea of equity, include a sort of emphasis on gender bias. And I don't think you can actually interrogate and inquire into ideas when you're staying within a single ideological framework. It's anti-intellectual, and all intellectuals need to go outside their framework and question themselves. Introspection and self-challenge are the basic precepts of how we acquire knowledge of the world, sir. So, respectively, I think all of those things you mentioned, equity, gender bias, they can be a part of a broader analysis, but the broader analysis must exist outside of a single umbrella, which is what I think only having those things you mentioned would put us under.
So let me push back a little bit on that. And by the way, I appreciate you being on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
There are multiple theories that coexist. Some of them actually overlap. Grounded theory, one of the theoretical constructs that I used for actually my second doctorate. I used grounded theory. That's not the only theory that I would subscribe to, right? Okay. To explain or analyze or compare data. And now you have to look at it from two data concepts: qualitative comparison, which is your social comparison, and then quantitative comparison, which is your analytical research numbers heavy comparison. We're looking at this data through those comparative models. And when you look at the data through those comparative models, you're not starting with a racial core. You're ending with a race disparity conclusion, but you're not starting with a race dynamic. Now, here's what I hear you saying. I hear you telling me that it could be race. It's on the table. That could be one issue. But you're saying it could also be other issues as well. So here's what I propose to you, brother. Because I've read what you have placed out there on social media, and I think you're doing the conversation a disservice because you know that critical race theory should be included in the lexicon of theoretical frameworks or even practical analysis. It should be one of them. If you say on my show that race could be involved.
Well, okay, so you said the lexicon of theoretical frameworks. That's, to me, is a composition of words that I'm not entirely sure addresses the core of my propositions. My proposition is that it shouldn't be in the classroom as fact, and that's actually the proposition that many of the bills.
Wait a minute, brother. Well, actually, I only got a minute. It's not in the. No, it's not.
The 1619 project,
sir. Sir, you're talking about less than 1% of curriculum. I'm talking about the vast majority. Sir, less than 1% of curriculum was connected to the 1619 project. It is and by the way, it's a great project and it's a great curriculum. I stand by it, but it's less than 1%. Let's talk about the overwhelming percentage, 99.99 point whatever it is, that actually teaches a core educational curriculum, not the foundation of critical race theory. It's not taught. You guys keep coming back to that as if it's taught in K through 12 education, and it's not. I just don't understand why y'all keep making that argument.
Well, sir, again, I've demonstrated to you that the 1619 project it's using methodology which is directly linked to critical pedagogy, and I think that's a very bad thing because critical pedagogy does not take into account a wide variety of ideas and explanations. It presumes, and this people can source me, words that wound, Matsuda, Crenshaw, Delgado, they all say that they presume through their lived experience that all disparities in all areas, housing, education, are racist.
And the reason why they say that is because they, as scholars, have decided to utilize that as their comparative analysis. But brother, let me correct you. Let me correct you on one thing before I go, okay?
Yes, sir.
When you say the critical race theory is presented as fact, the very word, the very phraseology is theory. Critical race theory. Theory, brother.
Yes.
Theory. Which means by definition and design of the phrase cannot be fact. It is a theoretical framework to analyze and compare. That's what it is.
If I may.
Yes.
If I may.
You got 1 minute, go ahead. You got the last one.
If I may, there are plenty of theories that constitute our understanding of the world, which are held as fact. For example, gravitation is one of those theories. So yes, even though a theory itself is supposed to be very contingent and supposed to be very not necessarily certain, there are people who believe the precepts of a theory are true and will teach those precepts as fact. Just because the theory itself may not have the word fact built into it does not mean people cannot in the material world go through and manifest the ideas of the theory as facts. So let's just be very clear with our words here.
All right, brother. I was very clear with the fact that critical race theory, by definition of the phrase, cannot be taught as fact, but as a theoretical framework.
I disagree.
And scholars have been doing that for many years. And let me say big ups to Dr. Chika Kua, my dissertation chair at Clark Atlanta University, who taught me a lot about CRT. All right, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you, Dr. Rich. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.